law, any handover of the remains of the deceased must comply with the prohibition of cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment, ensuring respect for the dignity of the deceased and their families. Earlier, UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric shared the SG's condemnation of what he called the parading of bodies and displaying of coffins, calling it abhorrent and appalling. The Secretary-General also reiterated his appeal to all combatants who are party to the fragile ceasefire to stand by their commitments towards the full implementation of the deal.
Recapping the top stories, 6 armed suspects have been shot dead during a shootout between the suspects and police in the Eastern Cape. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. We start in Durban with an overnight roadwork overrun into this morning's peak period. It's the M4 inbound at Jacobs. The closures in last night about 6 o'clock, and they're still there this morning. So if you come up the M4 off the N2 from Prospecton and you split to the Southern Freeway, there's quite a heavy backlog already as you line up into a single lane. Joburg looking okay this morning in terms of no major incidents on the highway. Centurion will be busy again as you loop around the ongoing closures of Rabi End and John Foster around that flood damage bridge section following the big rains this week. And Cape Town, very busy out of Mitchell's Plain. Slightly different traffic pattern this morning. There are 2 queues on the M7, one running north to Morgansteer Road, and then another queue as you line up through towards the R300. Saw this yesterday, seeing it again this morning. Old Fora Road at Meway, north side of the highway, Mfuleni area. Some very heavy congestion already out there early Friday morning. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. It's soccer, the CAF Champions League quarterfinal draw. Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns avoid each other. And in cricket, the Proteas captain Themba Bavuma lays down the ICC Champions Trophy expectations. We'll bring you all these stories and more at around 6:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
It's just gone 8 minutes after 6 on this Friday, the 21st of February, 2025. Hey, good morning all, and welcome to it, the Friday edition of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane, and I'm here to deliver your morning brief. Come, let us spend the next 3 hours together, informing and engaging each other and sharpening each other's perspectives on the key issues of the day. You can tell in my voice that I'm a bit it's still, the mood is a bit light. It's lightened up a bit. And that's because the sun is out for a change. Well, it looks like it will be out at some point over Johannesburg. But at least the skies seem to be clearing for the first time in a very long time. Johannesburg residents had almost forgotten. In fact, Gauteng, many parts of Gauteng, many of us had even forgotten what it feels like to have a day with clear skies. So I think many of us will welcome it because it's been grey and dull and really rainy over the last few days. So let me tell you what's coming up on the show over the next 3 hours. President Cyril Ramaphosa officially opens the Group of 20 G20 foreign ministers meeting in Johannesburg. So it's historic in many ways. The first time that the G20 presidency is held by an African country, first time this meeting of this nature is held on African soil. But it also comes amidst troubled waters diplomatically and geopolitically. Marco Rubio, for example, the United States Secretary of State, deciding to give the meeting a miss, accusing South Africa of, quote-unquote, doing very bad things, whatever that is. So the president spent a good chunk of his address yesterday explaining the theme and priorities of South Africa's G20 presidency, and that theme, solidarity, equality, and sustainability, which the U.S. somehow chose to interpret differently from everyone else a few weeks ago. So SABC News international editor Sophie Mkwena will give us an update at the top of 7, and that will be followed by a conversation with Business Leadership South Africa CEO Busisiwe Mavuso, reflecting on the G20 but also on recent developments around the postponed budget speech. In this hour, we'll bring you the political analysis of Professor Susan Boyson at about 20 to 7. She'll be weighing in on the prospects of success for the newly announced reconfigured leadership structures of the ANC's Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal provincial chapters. She's among the analysts not so convinced that the deployments of Amos Masondo and Hope Papo to the Gauteng leadership and Jeff Radebe and Mike Mabuya-Kulu to the KZN structure will have the desired effect. Mainly, her concerns center around the deep-rooted factionalism and questions about whether or not these leaders, these senior leaders, will be accepted and supported by the structures that they are meant to be working with. And then at about 20 past 8, we'll bring you this story. We talked about it a few weeks ago, recently in fact, as a mere proposal. Well, it looks like government has decided to press play on the idea of fitting police uniforms with body cams, so body cameras on the uniforms of police officers. The police minister, Senzo Mchunu, announcing that the SAPS will begin implementing body cameras, and that will start on April the 1st. This move is expected to enhance policing procedures and document interactions between officers and the public. We'll give you analysis on that at about 20 past 8, but also we are keen to hear from you what your views are on that story. Basically, it will mean that unless the police officer decides to switch off their body camera for one reason or another, all interactions between police officers and the public will be recorded and will be on camera to keep checks and balances and curb corruption and abuse. Do you think it will work? Will it curb police corruption as well as instances of abuse? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Weigh in on that. The number to dial 086 000 2032. Your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. Then I have this other story that I'd like to put on the agenda for you. We're not necessarily covering it today, but, it's worth reflecting on. Today is, of course, Armed Forces Day in South Africa. It coincides with the sinking of the SS Mendi on the English Channel in 1917 on the 21st of February. So I read a fascinating article on Defense Web that reports on the different perspectives on whether or not the SANDF soldiers that remain in the DRC are hostages, captives, POWs, prisoners of war of the M23 after that group overran and that alliance overran the city of Goma. The word used, the phrase used in the article is, quote unquote, confined to their barracks, the SANDF contingent. So, Armed Forces Day to me seems like a good point to bring the focus back to that issue of the deployment of the SANDF in the DRC. If the Summit DRC had a mandate to help the DRC armed forces to suppress forces like the Rwandan-backed M23, is that still a valid mission, given that the two provinces, at least two provinces, have now fallen to the M23 alliance? And according to reports, that has happened with little resistance from the force that the Summit DRC were meant to be assisting. That is the armed forces of the DRC. Burundi, for example, it's reported, have withdrawn their forces from the DRC. Do our leaders, we bring back that conversation, do our leaders owe us to say more on what the future holds and perhaps use the Armed Forces Day to give a full account of whether our soldiers are hostages or not in the DRC and whether they intend to remain in the DRC and perhaps reinforce that deployment, and if so, to what end? Is this not a good day to bring that conversation back on the table? Because rightly so, we were all shocked when those fatalities occurred, but have we quickly moved on from this story, which is of such great importance? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Of course, we have all of your regulars locked and loaded for you, and Musa with your news updates every half hour. Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so. Zaikan is watching your sport throughout the morning. Ndauling Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered, and of course Sipho Mantula with your Africa update just before 8 a.m. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The first hour of the Friday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Good morning to you, Anne, and welcome back.
Well, thank you, Tulas. Good morning.
Yeah, I'm good. Good morning. So, what's on your diary this morning?
Well, the foreign ministers from the G20 top economies gathering in Johannesburg, and we know this is amid some geopolitical rifts. South Africa, which currently holds the G20 presidency, opened the group's first major meeting of the year yesterday, and President Cyril Ramaphosa calling on the G20 leaders to promote diplomatic solutions to the ongoing conflicts, and these conflicts include, among others, those in the eastern DRC, Sudan, the Middle East and Ukraine. And today the UN Security Council will vote on a draft resolution that's calling on the M23 rebels to immediately cease hostilities and withdraw from all controlled areas in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And also an update, the Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Park Stau is saying that there's no set date as yet. This is to meet with the U.S. counterparts, and it follows President Donald Trump's decision to cut financial aid to South Africa over the misinformation about the Expropriation Act dealing with the land reform policies in the country. Mop-up operations continuing in KwaZulu-Natal following heavy rainfall, and the eThekwini municipality announcing the closure of several beaches, and this is in response to the heavy rainfall, flooding and mudslides across KZN, and the Provincial Department of Cooperative Governance confirming that at least 6 people are confirmed to have died due to this. And there's 2 State of the Provinces addresses that's taking place, one in the Eastern Cape as well as in the Free State, and communities in the Eastern Cape hoping that the Premier Oscar Mabuyane will come up with some tangible solutions to the socio-economic policies, challenges rather, they are facing. Mabuyane will deliver his State of the Province address for the 7th administration later today. And then in the Free State, the Premier there, Makwin Letsau Mataye, also delivering a second State of the Province address, and the Premier expected to outline key policy goals for this coming year. And the South African Law Reform Commission, they are calling on the public to comment on non-trial resolutions for corruption cases, and the Commission saying non-trial resolutions should be used for individuals or companies that's accused of corruption, whether they admit responsibility without a finding of being guilty. In court quickly, the pre-trial hearing of the former personal assistant of the then Free State Premier Ace Magashule expected to be heard in the Free State High Court, and Muruwari Chulota and 17 co-accused are facing fraud and corruption charges that relates to the 2014 asbestos roof removal project. The pre-trial hearing in the ongoing investigation of the disappearance of Jocelyn Smith also set to proceed in the High Court in Cape Town today. It's been a year since the 7-year-old disappeared from her home. And then just lastly, the MEC for Health and Wellness in Gauteng will officially hand over 16 mobile clinics to the 5 health districts in the province at the Chris Hani Baragwanath Academic Hospital. So some of the stories that we are focusing on this morning.
Yeah, I always say you have a packed diary, but as you were talking, I've got... Yeah, so many of your stories just jump at me. Those non-trial resolutions for corruption matters, state of the province. I've got my own views about whether or not the extent to which you should be splurging on these things, right? There's value in accounting to the public for what your programs will be, but perhaps that can be scaled down, especially right now in the economic times we face, that you still go to the public and address them what your priorities are for the year, but you don't splurge such that it's almost like another State of the Nation address.
Very true, very true.
Yeah,
True.
striking that balance. All right. Thank you for that, Anne. We'll hear from you a bit later on. Anne Musa will keep you updated on the news every half hour here on The Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So I'm excited about the weather clearing for a change in Gauteng. Let's see what it's looking like in the rest of the country. 2 impact-based warnings coming through from the South African Weather Service. One is a yellow level 4 warning. It says disruptive rain leading to flooding of roads, bridges and settlements, damage to property and infrastructure and danger to life due to fast-flowing streams. And those conditions are expected over the east central and southeastern parts of the Northern Cape. Then you have a yellow level 2 warning, disruptive rain leading to localized flooding of susceptible bridges, roads and settlements, damage to property and infrastructure expected over the central and extreme northeastern parts of the Northern Cape, western parts of both the Northwest and the Free State, northeastern parts of the Western Cape, as well as the western parts of the Eastern Cape. The rest of your weather looks like this. Pretoria will be cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers with a minimum of 17 and a maximum of 26. Johannesburg, cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 15 to 24. Mbombela will be cloudy with isolated showers, 18 to 27. Polokwane, cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 17 to 28. Mahikeng, cloudy with scattered showers and thunder showers, 18 to 23. Bloemfontein, partly cloudy at first, otherwise cloudy with scattered showers and thunder showers, 17 to 22. Kimberley, cloudy with widespread showers and thunder showers, 18 to 22. Uppington, cloudy with widespread showers and thunder showers, 20 to 32. Cape Town will be fine, becoming partly cloudy from the afternoon, 18 to 25. George, fine in the morning, otherwise partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers from the afternoon, 20 to 24. Gqeberha will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy with widespread showers and rain, mainly in the evening, 22 to 27. East London will be partly cloudy, becoming cloudy with scattered showers and thunder showers from mid-morning, 22 to 26. Durban will be partly cloudy, 23 to 29. Richards Bay, partly cloudy with isolated showers and rain, 22 to 30. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will see morning fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy, 16 to 31.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matriek mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
Borussia Dortmund and FC Union Berlin are both searching for a decent position in the top half. They have a big battle for maximum points. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch Borussia Dortmund FC versus FC Union Berlin on Saturday, 22 February at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
24 minutes after 6, let's turn our attention to this story now. The United States and Russia have taken a significant step toward negotiating an end to the war in Ukraine by agreeing to form high-level teams to engage in talks. This shift was signified by a meeting between the U.S. officials and Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday. It marks the first direct talks between top U.S. and Russian officials since Russia's invasion in 2022. All right, let's bring Roland Henwood now for more analysis on this. He is a political scientist and commentator at the University of Pretoria. Good morning to you, Roland, and thank you for your time. So how significant is a meeting at the level of Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov and all the other top officials discussing with a sharp focus on the war in Ukraine?
Good morning to Thulasizwe and also to your listeners. This is very significant because in one decision and one meeting, you've effectively cancelled the isolation and the pressure on Russia, and you have opened the door for Russia to not only become part of a discussion, but to exclude Europe and to exclude Ukraine. So effectively what Mr. Trump has done is give President Putin the one thing he always said, and that is he will negotiate the future of Ukraine with the US, not with Europe and not with Ukrainians. And that is a very, very important development, very bad for Ukraine and very good for Russia.
And you say very bad for Ukraine and very good for Russia. He actually went a step further, did Donald Trump, did he not, earlier on in the week with that extensive post on his Truth Social. That amounted, when I read that, to a switch of allegiance mid-war.
Well, I mean, effectively what Mr. Trump has done is to say that everything President Putin has been claiming and saying since he invaded Ukraine is actually correct, and everything that Mr. Zelensky has been saying is wrong, and he accused him of being a dictator, of being illegitimately in power, and also of being a leader that has no support amongst his people. Now, I mean, that is, it may sound like words, but this is devastating to Ukraine, and it's a big challenge to Europe. It poses so many significant challenges and opens the door to so many problems in terms of the politics that people have become accustomed to. Where it's going to end is difficult to say, but if one looks at this and also the context, I mean, what came out of Washington yesterday, in a sense, is shocking, in that the subtext is Ukraine must give US access to very important mineral mines and minerals in Ukraine, and then they can have negotiations on the future. Now that is basically playing out what's happening in the DRC, if one may be so blatant. We want to control your mines, we don't give a damn for your sovereignty and your security and whatever. It's just completely, it boggles the mind.
So what are the implications then for Ukraine? Is this war effectively wrapping up on terms that they would not like, whether they like it or not? Is this the end of the war and it's ending not in their favor?
Well, that's up in the air. I think the other element to this is what happens in Europe. Europe is the geographical home of Ukraine. We know that the European defense system is not at the level it is supposed to be. It's not funded. It hasn't been maintained and developed because it relied on the US for decades. And yes, there has been changes, but Europe has been a key funder of Ukraine. And they've supported Ukraine also in terms of giving them access to high-level military technology and equipment. The question is, can that be sustained, and will Europe be able to do that if the US not only withdraws the support, but takes side with Russia? So that is going to be key. And then there are other ramifications far away from Europe. One of the arguments that have been used is that China is looking at this, and if they see what Trump is doing, it's going to give them the green light to essentially take over Taiwan because the US won't support them and won't protect Taiwan. So there are huge issues at play at this level, at this stage, at the rhetorical level. But in terms of the practical consequences, of course, the one thing that nobody knows so far is what Mr. Trump is really going to do and wants to do. Because what he says and does are completely different at this stage. So there's a lot of uncertainty and confusion.
I'm just wondering what the implications are for South Africa's role and understanding of that conflict in Russia and Ukraine. The tornadoing that we are seeing between the United States and Russia, given our tense and fraught relationship with the Trump administration at the moment, could that be some kind of a way to start some kind of conversations, back channel conversations, firstly about our understanding of the war in Ukraine, but also perhaps even broader in terms of these relations?
I don't think so. I think the uncertainties and the doublespeak and what comes from Washington is to, at this stage, you can't work on that. What is interesting, though, is Mr. Zelensky, after his fallout with Washington in the last days, called 5 heads of state in the world. And one of them was President Ramaphosa. And that, I think, is quite important. It shows that there is some element of diplomacy going on, but also that South Africa is not at this stage completely out of it. The question is, what is the context of that discussion, and what is South Africa's positioning in this? I don't think our engagement with Washington at this stage is anything to go by. It's fraught. It's not good. It's not good for South Africa where we are. But it is interesting that Mr. Zelensky spoke to the president of South Africa as one of the 5 leaders he called after his rebuff by Mr. Trump.
Yeah. All right. No, thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Roland Henwood, who is a political scientist and commentator at the University of Pretoria. At this point, let's check in with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us in the headlines. President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will continue to seek an audience with the United States of America with the aim of discussing issues of concern to the White House, and it is after the U.S. criticized South Africa on its Expropriation Act. 6 armed suspects have been shot dead during a shootout between the suspects and police in the Eastern Cape, and a pre-trial hearing in the ongoing investigation of the disappearance of Jocelyn Smith is set to proceed in the High Court in Cape Town today. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Pretoria crash on the Mopani Highway, the mighty Mopani Highway. It's happened at Block XX. If you're leaving Shoshenguve, it's quite a heavy backlog. You might want to consider the M35 Sopan Road down to Ondastaport to beat that one. The road closed around Centurion. Henop River is still there. John Foster Rabi and N. So just expect looping sort of traffic around those closures to cause some delays again. Big delays coming out from Protea Glen and Lenasia on the N12. It's a crash by the Golden Highway exit. Traffic is heavy. It's all the way back to Klipspruit Valley Road, so from Protea Glen, a reroute through Soweto, and perhaps if you're at Lenasia side, a reroute via sort of Fun Valley and join the N12 from the Golden Highway. Durban, roadworks overnight, overrunning into this morning, M4 northbound at Jacobs, 1 lane open, heavy backlogs from the N2 as you split onto that M4 Southern Freeway. Cape Town, a crash at Hospital Bend on your way inbound to watch for, and same as yesterday, very heavy pressure around the Mfuleni side of Khayelitsha. Old Fora Road's heavy. The Muway Bridge going over the N2 is really bad. And there's some queuing pressure on the N2 off-ramps to get into Muway. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey, good morning to you, Zai. So we're getting a sense of what the next stage of the CAF Champions League is going to look like. That is the quarterfinals. And we have somehow a South African derby has been avoided.
For now, right?
Yeah.
In the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
But we are flying so high, Thulas.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this tournament, and I just hope that we move beyond the quarterfinal stage. This is Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns. They've sidestepped each other. The Buccaneers remain the only unbeaten team in the tournament. They'll face Algeria's Mouloudia Alger, a side with a rock-solid defense that's kept 7 clean sheets in 10 games. Now, Sundowns, they'll take on Esperance of Tunisia in a repeat of last season's semi-final where the Brazilians suffered 2 narrow 1-0 defeats. Now, in this case, it will be Sundowns coach Miguel Cardoso. Will his former club come to haunt him? Let's hear.
Well, the team changed a little bit now in the market in January. I confess that I didn't saw them anymore. So after I left Esperance to come here, I didn't watch again nothing regarding how they play. But they will be strong. It's a team with experience, a team that has been reaching the last stages of the Champions League, that has won Champions League several times, and that has always the will to do well.
Elsewhere, Egyptian powerhouse Al Ahly, winners of a record 12 CAF Champions League titles, they'll battle Al Hilal, the Sudanese club forced to play in Mauritania, and that's due to ongoing civil war. The first leg ties kick off on the 1st of April, with return legs on the 8th of April, and you can catch it live on SABC Sport. Elsewhere, AZ Alkmaar will face either Manchester United or Tottenham in the last 16 of the Europa League after Alkmaar saw off Galatasaray in their knockoff phase playoff. The Dutch side has won the first leg 4-1, and they went through and drew 2-2 in yesterday's second leg to progress 6-3 on aggregate. And Paula Diabla scored twice as Roma fought back to beat Porto 3-2 to seal their place in the last 16 of the Europa League. Cricket now, the Proteas captain Themba Bavuma has laid down their expectations for the ICC Champions Trophy as their campaign gets underway in Pakistan today. Bavuma will lead his charges out in Karachi as they come up against last year's T20 Cricket World Cup semi-final opponents, Afghanistan. Now, the skipper Bavuma knows that they won't take the Afghans lightly.
We've got a proper opening game against Afghanistan, who, super competitive, especially in these type of conditions. So, the challenge that they'll bring from a slow bowling point of view, their spinners, the mystery bowlers, and also their swing bowlers being their seamers, that's really going to ask certain questions of us. But yeah, we're all looking forward to the proper start of the tournament.
Now, cricket action elsewhere. Shubman Gill scored an unbeaten century, and this after Mohammad Shami took 5 wickets of 53 balls as India began their Champions Trophy campaign with a 6-wicket win, and that was over Bangladesh. Let's go to cricket action and, tennis action rather. Andrei Rublev converted his 8th match point against the second seed Alex de Minaur to seal a semi-final spot, and that's in the Qatar Open. Carlos Alcaraz crashing out of the Qatar Open quarterfinals, and he was defeated by the player Jiří Lehečka of the Czech Republic 6-3, 3-6, 6-4. In the women's draw at the Dubai Open, the Czech Karolina Mukova advancing to the semi-finals, defeating the Romanian wildcard Sorana Castilla 6-2, 7-5. We'll volley back with more sport here on the Morning Brief. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Hey, Ndauling, good morning to you. Let's start with news out of Walmart. Tell me about their outlook for 2025. Is it disappointing to the markets?
Morning, Thulasizwe. Yes, it is. Now, the retailer spooked investors with a downbeat forecast. Walmart expects profit growth to slow this year despite a 4% increase in the holiday quarter revenue. Now, the company's e-commerce sales in the US soared to 20% compared to the previous year, marking the 11th consecutive quarter of double-digit gains. But looking ahead into this year, Walmart expects net sales to grow 3.4%, which is slower than previously expected. Now, the company CFO, John David Rainey, says the conservative outlook is due to uncertainty in the geopolitical landscape and potential tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada. However, he emphasized that Walmart is well equipped to navigate these challenges and pass on cost savings to consumers. The forecast also mirrors what's currently happening on the ground, with U.S. retail sales slipping 0.9% in January, surprising to the downside and suggesting that, the potential tariffs could add on to inflation and then weigh on consumers' purchasing power.
All right, let's talk tech for a moment, right? Apple. So it seems they're coming, I don't know, are they expanding beyond their traditional deep-pocketed market like you to Povo like me to try and give us our own iPhone that we can afford?
I don't like that comparison at all, Tilas. But it seems like they are in an effort to boost their iPhone sales. They've really been dealing with declining sales in Europe as well as in China. So in an effort to boost sales, they've launched a new model dubbed the 16E. The new model comes at a time, of course, where Apple is struggling with those iPhone sales. The 16E is said to be more affordable. I was looking at that, the price, and I thought to myself, I don't know how affordable this is, but hey, the 16E is retailing for $599, and this compared to $1,200 for the 16 Pro Max. I did, a little conversion, and that iPhone Pro Max is about 30,000 South African rands, while the 16E goes for just over 11,000 Rand. So I don't know, that price point is still quite hefty for me. So the 16E marks Apple's first cellular modem called C1, replacing Qualcomm modems used in previous models. And this new device also supports Apple Intelligence, making it the most affordable phone in the iPhone range, with access to features like image generation and notification summaries. Now, Apple says the low-end iPhones are crucial for attracting new customers to its ecosystem. The iPhone 16e's release comes after the company reported a 1% decline in overall iPhone sales for the December quarter, despite selling over $69 billion worth of phones. The iPhone 16e's launch also signals a shift in Apple's product launch strategy. Instead of hosting these big live events, Apple seems to now be opting for quieter releases through press releases and social media teasers.
I wonder how many of the bells and whistles it will come with, the cheaper version, that is. All right, Laslin Dowling, please give us our first recap of market activity for the morning.
So starting off in the US, stocks pulled back in yesterday's session as investors scrutinized Walmart's outlook and assessed the impact of President Trump's planned tariffs and policy shifts. The Dow Jones taking the biggest knock over that front, down 1%. Back at home, the JSE staging a recovery, the all-share gaining 0.6%, fueled by an over 3% increase in the Resources 10 complex. Now that index mainly benefited from record high gold prices. On the currency front, the rand making gains from the 1840-1850 level to 1833 to the dollar this hour. And then over in Asia, sentiment mix as traders weighed up tariff talks and economic data from Japan.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauling Lechela. She'll be back with another update for you just after 7:30 here on The Morning Brief.
With Ford's Blue Sky offers, get a new Ranger XL from just $5,899 per month, including our optional service plan, only when financed through Ford Credit. 10% deposit, primeless 4.75%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers, where our Ford Family Guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. Ford Credit is a registered credit provider and an authorized financial services provider. T&Cs apply.
Defending WAFCON champions are tackling Mehaladitwe in another glittering international friendly. Both nations describe their first match as the first half. Will Banyana Dr. Ellis dominate this 90 minutes, or will the beautiful flowers conquer the pitch battle? Witness the on-field grudge between Abu Makelwa, South Africa versus Lesotho on Tuesday, 25 February at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 2. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. It's 2025, aka 2020 Thrive. And from January to December, we're managing our expenses better, even in the month of love. Whatever personal expenses or aspirations you have, make them happen now with a Nedbank personal loan of up to 400,000 Rand and enjoy our best available interest rate.
Search Nedbank personal loans and show your goals some love. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag The Morning Brief.
16 minutes to 7. Let's turn to politics now. Give some credit to the reporting and analysis of independent news on this story. It got us thinking. Some political analysts say they see no prospects of success for the newly appointed interim leadership of the African National Congress in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Reports suggest that Amos Masondo and Jeff Radebe have been tasked with revitalizing the party in these crucial provinces ahead of the 2026 local government elections. But analysts say they are concerned about the effectiveness of these appointments in overcoming deep-rooted factionalism within the party. Let's bring in Professor Susan Boyson, who is a political analyst, to talk to us about this. Good morning to you, Prof, and thank you for your time. Barring some administrative processes and internal party processes that perhaps still need to be done, we know the names of the senior leaders that are touted to be taking center stage in leadership in these provinces: Amos Masondo and Hope Papo in Gauteng, Jeff Khatebe and Mike Mabuyakulu in KZN. Are you at the very least convinced by the rationale for deploying such seniors to these two provinces?
Good morning to Thulasizwe and your listeners. Yes, one can have sympathy with the ANC. This is absolutely imperative that they do go out and act if they want to have serious futures in these provinces, especially Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, and to be seen to be acting because action is needed. But the task is so vast and the conditions in the ground probably so unfavorable that very few people who are being deployed to intervene can possibly look at big success. And in this case, this certainly applies to these persons who now have been deployed in the provinces as well. And the issue of factionalism, having to operate in conditions of factionalism, in conditions where the ANC is very suspicious, very often with very good reason, as to the penetration of the MKP and Jacob Zuma's people into those territories, to what extent the damages to the ANC have been permanent in those areas or not. So it is absolutely imperative that action needs to be taken. And this is certainly an important way of doing it. But there are going to be uphill battles there. Also, if I may just add this, because factionalism is certainly the core problem, and it expresses wings over other actions as well. But there can also be questions, we've seen those questions, whether it was justified just to single out the two provinces that have now slipped deep into coalition territory, where the ANC has taken big dents in its support. One can always look at also the vacillation of top ANC leadership, looking at how uncertain they seem to be as to what exactly they are doing, mixed messages that are arising. And so that type of uncertainty of leadership, hesitation to announce their steps, the time it took to announce their steps, which also showed to split opinions within the top structures of the ANC. These all certainly contribute to the lower prospects of success.
Yeah, so I think the ANC was sort of paying attention to those concerns about factionalism and not wanting to deepen factionalism. I say that because you see how they tried to retain the leadership structures in one form or another and ensure that, well, some of the people that served in the leadership continued to work side by side with these deployed seniors. It's very different, is it not, Prof, from previous models, such as what we saw in the Northwest, for example, a couple of years ago, where it's wholesale dismantling of the leadership replaced by an interim structure.
Yes, the Northwest case also comes to mind. It's also the Free State case, a little lower in intensity, but the Northwest case certainly came to mind when one considers the current intervention. Very deep evidence here of attention to that territoriality in politics and the imperative to act constitutionally, not just to go step in and remove leadership, not to give grants for challenges from the ground. But yes, the co-convenership, some supplementary role, some not quite well defined, for example, for Sibonisa Duma in KwaZulu-Natal, treading very carefully. That is written all over the current intervention. Simultaneously then, because it's such a carefully structured intervention, then the question arises from regions and branches in these provinces as to why us and why not given more definitive grounds here. And of course, it's so challenging in this way because there's so much need for action all across most ANC structures. And these ones have just slipped a little bit deeper into that minority status territory for the ANC. And then when does the central leadership take over, and how do they persuade their membership and their organizational structures, that this is a justified intervention on the basis of organizational grant. Previously, many of the grants for interventions in different places have been specific political actions, tangible political actions by those now displaced or removed leaders, instead of this thing of organizational capacity and hard work, ability to swing the branches in behind the ANC on the ground. This current rationale for and necessity for interventions goes really to the heart of any organizational. And organizations can only be as good as their political circumstances allow.
All right, thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Professor Susan Boyson, who is a political analyst.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
If you're just about to join the Mopani Highway from Shoshinguve, you might want to take an alternative. It's crash at Block XX. It's a very heavy Friday queue coming out of Shosha in towards that one. The M35 Sopan Road down Ondesterboard looks okay, and that'll come into play as a good alternative routing just to avoid a massive backlog on the R80. A crash coming in from Protea Glen on the N12 at the Golden Highway, except traffic on that route is heavy. It's parked all the way back through Clearspray Valley Road, so from Protea Glen, think about a rerouting through Soweto local routes there to avoid very heavy traffic on the N12. Now, Durban, the overrunning roadworks phenomenon on the M4 is with us again this morning. Not there all the time, but sometimes these guys really overrun into rush hour, and it's happening this morning. So roadworks on the M4 around Jacobs on your way to Durban. It's a monster queue that backs all the way down to the N2 highway. So again, a reroute option there would be the N2 from Prospect and up to the M7. The M7 on the Bluff route, or Bluff-bound carriageway down, and then rejoin the M4 Southern Freeway from that point. Cape Town, very heavy at Mfuleni. Saw this yesterday. It's even worse this morning. Old Fora Road around the Muway Junction and Muway across the N2 bridge, because that's all badly backed up. There's a lot of pressure on the N2 off-ramps to get into that Muway bridge system as well. And the N1 into Cape Town, fairly heavy. Queues this morning from Plattekloof Road down to the Kuiberg interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
In the Arena is a docu-series that takes an in-depth look at the life and career of the legendary tennis player Serena Williams, offering a behind-the-scenes glimpse into her journey, both on and off the court. It explores her rise to tennis dominance, challenges, and personal experiences. Do not miss out on a great story of incredible impact. Catch In the Arena on Saturdays at 3 p.m. on SABC3. Alternatively, at 9 p.m. on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturdays and Thursdays. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Dr. Nikki Alexander, Dr. Thomas Chamberlain, and Dr. Jack Hodgson form a dedicated team of forensic pathologists who try to work out how and why the victim died. This series sees Nikki investigate a murder that's a carbon copy of a case from her past. She soon suspects that the killings are personal to her. But who will believe her? Meanwhile, Jack creates tension when he finds himself aligned with a police complaints investigator over the accidental shooting of a girl by armed police. And a seemingly random killing in the remote countrysides leads Nikki and Jack into the dangerous underbelly of a criminal world. This is Silent Witness, Thursdays and Fridays at 10 p.m. Starts 20 February only on S3. Open up.
S3. It was all good just a week ago. Life was smooth. I was paying almost nothing for electricity tokens. All that changed when I was given a big fine for buying illegal electricity tokens from illegal vendors and my neighbor for tampering with his meter. Now, I might go to jail when all I had to do was register for free basic electricity at my local municipality since I'm unemployed. Ungathatha my chance. Buy electricity legally. Report illegal electricity token sales in your area and meter tampering to Eskom on 0800 11 27 22. This is Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
6 minutes to 7. Some experts say South Africa has been experiencing a rise in vehicle hijackings in recent months. These hijackings are highly targeted, with criminals focusing on specific vehicles for various purposes. Provinces like the Eastern and Western Cape have experienced sharp increases in hijacking statistics. Let's speak now to Juan Hanekom, who is the National Director of the South African Motor Body Repairers Association. Good morning to you, Juan, and thank you for your time. So I look at the crime statistics for the second quarter, the official statistics. They show me that carjacking as a category of crime was said to be down some 9.4%, but you and I know that that's, the weakness is that by the time we get to reporting, it's a few months behind. So what is the actual situation at the moment as far as you understand it, the real-time situation as you understand it?
Oh, good morning. Well, as you can see in the stats there is a bit of a lag behind there, but essentially what it really boils down to is the numbers are way too high. You're looking at about, if we take even at 9% down, we're still looking at about 5,500 cars over that period. It's worth roughly 60 cars a day. It's alarming.
Yeah. And there are specific regions of the country that are of concern, including for industry players such as yourself.
Well, specifically your metros, your economic activity is considerably higher. In the previous sets, we saw that Eastern Cape and the Western Cape were the highest, we had the highest upturn, but particularly in your metros.
Yeah. So talk to me about the categories and types of vehicles that are being targeted and the syndicates that are at play.
Oh, sorry, give me a second, yeah.
Okay.
So typically, in terms of this entire setup here, car hijacking is primarily driven by demand. But generally speaking, criminals target popular car brands and models. You can't exactly specify now a specific brand or model type, as it's largely dependent on the current demand in the market. And these sort of things can change from time to time depending on trends. For example, you might find that buckets and SUVs are popular and are smuggled over the borders due to demand. That is potentially triggered by poor conditions of roads across the continent, and so on and so forth.
And we talk about the role of syndicates, but you represent the South African Motor Body Repairers Association. Talk to me about your concern about the possibility of parts from that are stripped from hijacked vehicles ending up in some areas of where practitioners in your field apply their trade. I believe you have a particular concern that relates to guarding your industry against being used and abused in that way.
Yeah, 100%. So typically in the motor body repair space, our biggest concern at the moment is vehicles that are once written off, right? And I'll get to why this is important in a moment. Now, you take a vehicle that is stolen. This vehicle that is written off is sitting at a salvage yard. Somebody steals a vehicle that matches this type of vehicle, and the identity of the written off vehicle gets now transplanted onto the vehicle that's now been stolen. Now, all of a sudden, this vehicle that everybody's looking for that's been hijacked is now missing, and it's assumed the new identity of a vehicle that's been previously written off, and this now finds its way back into the market in some cases, which is extreme. There's a gap there, and essentially from our side of things, what it really boils down to is a lack of process from government in the sense of actually coding vehicles correctly and maintaining a proper vehicle history, which would obviously prevent this sort of thing and classify and code these types of vehicles. In terms of the other aspect of some of these vehicles that do find that are stripped down for spares and sold back into the market, the other vehicles that are being salvaged now, or the vehicles that make it into the scrap yards, these vehicles are being repaired with the parts from those stolen vehicles and then again sold into the thing. In terms of the actual formalized aspect of the market, there's the things like the second-hand goods sector. It's highly regulated for the guys actually operating within the scope of the law. and our members are quite hard on following that. But for the guys that aren't, there's a huge risk
I
there.
see.
And
So is that where the gap is, in that the
Yes.
regulation, it doesn't apply across? It's only for those who are registered and operating under regulations, but you are saying there's a larger market that is not under regulation.
No, 100%. There's a severe gap, especially in the vehicle salvage space, where the vehicle gets written off, and either, like I mentioned earlier, either that a stolen vehicle finds its way back onto the road through a rebirthing process of assuming the written off vehicle's identity, or that written off vehicle's parts gets put in, or the stolen vehicle's parts gets put into a previously written off vehicle, and finds its way back onto the road with a subpar repair. There is very little. There is regulation to protect it, but it's only those that are following the regulation that are actually protected by it.
All right. No, thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That's Juan Hanekom, who is the National Director of the South African Motor Body Repairers Association. That brings us to 7 a.m. and Musa on standby with your latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30760. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, South Africa committed to a good relationship with the United States, and Israeli military alleged body released by Hamas is not of a hostage. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will continue to seek an audience with the United States of America with the aim of discussing issues of concern to the White House. This after the U.S. criticized South Africa on its Expropriation Act. Addressing the media on the margins of the G20 Foreign Affairs meeting in Johannesburg, President Ramaphosa said diplomatic relations are the only means to resolve differences between countries.
We are committed to having a good relationship with the United States, and we do relate to them in a number of ways. We will, in the diplomatic process, be able to have those matters discussed, to have those matters dealt with, so that we are able to iron out wrinkles that may have appeared in our relationship.
6 armed suspects have been shot dead during a shootout between the suspects and police in the Eastern Cape. The incident happened yesterday on the N2 near Ndabakazi in Butterworth. Police spokesperson Sipokazi Mawiza says members of the National Intervention Unit were following up on information about 2 vehicles with firearms inside. Mawiza says police spotted the vehicles near Kofimvaba and tried to stop them, but they sped off.
A chase ensued and a backup was called to assist on the chase, and while they were between Ndabakazi and Butterworth, the alleged suspects shot at the police who then retaliated. On investigation, 6 people were fatally wounded and firearms were recovered on their vehicles. The case has been referred to Independent Police Investigating Directorate, that is IPD, for further investigation.
A pre-trial hearing in the ongoing investigation of the disappearance of Jocelyn Smith is set to proceed in the High Court in Cape Town today. It's been a year since the 7-year-old disappeared from a home in Saldanha Bay. Her mother, Kelly Smith, Jacqueline Apollos, a boyfriend at the time, and Stevino van Rijn face charges of kidnapping and human trafficking in connection with the child's disappearance. Jocelyn was reported missing in mid-February last year. The Sianda Bakhatla platinum mine at Swartklip outside Tabazimbi says a dam wall has partially collapsed due to heavy rains. The mine spokesperson, Hope Tjaga, says the Bierspruit Recreation Dam has exceeded its capacity, this resulting in the collapse of the dam wall. He says they've informed the water authorities and communities downstream.
What we've done, we basically closed this area for public safety,
and we are closely monitoring the conditions. We've also communicated with the relevant government departments, particularly the National Department of Water Affairs, as required by law. We've also have engagement with our employees and the broader community through our different structures, which includes our councillors as well as the community at large. We will comprehensively assess the situation and make sure that the necessary maintenance work commences very soon.
And finally, the Israeli military says the two boys whose bodies were returned by Hamas yesterday had been murdered by terrorists. It said 10-year-old Kafir Bibas and his 4-year-old brother Ariel were killed soon after the abduction, along with their mother Shiri. The IDF also said a body that Hamas said was Shiri's is an unidentified person. The BBC's Charlotte Gallagher has more.
We haven't had a response from Hamas yet, but Israel will be demanding to know where Shiri is and also who these remains belong to as well. But they are saying that these boys were murdered in captivity in November 2023, so around a month after they were abducted. They're suggesting that they weren't killed in an airstrike. Hamas are saying that happened, they were killed in an airstrike, so it's a real war of words at the moment between what actually happened to those two boys and, of course, their mother, who for the moment Israel are saying is missing.
Recapping the top story, President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will continue to seek an audience with the United States of America with the aim of discussing issues of concern to the White House. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Leap into February with this unbeatable deal from Outsurance. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. Either way, you win. Make today the day you switch and save. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Update on a couple of big ones this morning. The R80 Mopani Highway leaving Shoshanguve, very heavy traffic queues to the block to XX this morning. Must be quite a big crash. And what we're now noticing is the alternative M35 is getting quite busy with diverting pressures going into Onderstepoort. So both the key routes leaving Shoshanguve under pressure. The M12 coming through La Masia up from Protea Glen. That crash on the Joburg-bound carriageway by the Golden Highway exit causing very heavy delays. Durban's M4 inbound, the roadworks that have run, overnight roadworks overrunning into this morning at Jacobs, now pushing a queue right back to the M2. That's an extreme backlog of truck and vehicular traffic. Avoid that if you can. You could go take N2, M7 and then rejoin the M4 to get into Durban. That way it'd be a pretty good route around. Cape Town's R300 looking busy from Delft going up towards the Farrebik Road exit, busier than normal on that run through. The M5's fairly busy as well from Kenilworth all the way to the Kuberg interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer. Stellenbosch FC, they draw against Zamalek. That's in the Confederation Cup. And later today, we've got the Proteas. They'll be taking on Afghanistan, the opening campaign of the ICC Champions Trophy. Details around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Hey folks, good morning. It's just gone 8 minutes after 7. We're into the second hour of the morning brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. It's great to be in your company on this Friday morning. Let me tell you what's coming up in this hour. Well, with or without the participation of the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, the G20 foreign ministers meeting is going ahead in Johannesburg. And yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressing that gathering, unpacking what exactly South Africa means when it says the theme theme for its presidency will be solidarity, equality, and sustainability. The SABC News international news editor, Sophie Mkwena, on standby to give us an update and the behind the scenes of what was happening at that meeting that started yesterday. Staying with the theme of the G20, there's something called the B20. That is the business formation, right? It brings together the business leadership and formations from these 20 countries that make up the G20. Well, countries including the African Union, if you include the African Union as an international body. The G20 business leadership is also meeting under these auspices of the G20 and basically carrying on with the agenda of the G20 and South Africa's presidency thereof. We'll be talking to Busisiwe Mavuso, who is the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, about the B20 and the need for collaboration between business across these countries and territories, but at the same time reflecting on the events, the extraordinary events of the last few days, with the budget having to be postponed at the 11th hour. So that conversation coming up immediately after my chat with Sophie Mkwena. And then later on, we'll reflect on what's been a tragic few days in KwaZulu-Natal, the death toll from, the recent inclement weather and mudslides. Now stands at six people that have died following heavy rainfalls across KwaZulu-Natal. And of course, you had those rainfalls also happening in Gauteng. We'll be in conversation with Thulasizwe Simelane, who's the KwaZulu-Natal Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs MEC, and that conversation coming up at about 10 to 8 this morning. I'm still taking your calls. Two issues that we set on the agenda for you. The first one, the Police Minister Senzo Mchunu telling us police officers will start wearing body cams so that there's accountability, and that is set to start on the 1st of April. What do you think? Will this help to bring down corruption within the police force, as well as ensure that there are fewer instances of abuse when police officers interact with members of the public? And also, I did ask you about whether or not the Armed Forces Day, which is being marked today, is a good point for us to return to the conversation around our deployment in the DRC and demand accountability and a fuller account on behalf by the authorities as to whether or not the soldiers who remain in the DRC, are they captives of the M23, prisoners of war of the M23? What is the plan exactly as far as that deployment is concerned, considering that the M23 and its alliance have overran 2 provinces in the DRC? Your calls, the number to dial 086 000 2032. I'll take your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Friday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Whether you're having a early, snoozy, tantrumy, chill, frustrating, or jokey morning. Mornings love McDonald's, so choose happy and enjoy a Burry Burger Double and a short filter coffee for only R39.90 from 6 to 10:30 a.m. at McDonald's.
S3 and Lorna Maseko are adding flavor to your Wednesday evenings. Lorna invites you on a journey of discovering new ways of transforming South African pantry staples into delectable and budget-friendly meals. From reimagining traditional South African dishes to infusing global inspirations, Lorna's inventive recipes and seasoned cooking tips inspire creativity and will empower viewers to navigate the kitchen with savvy resourcefulness. Tune into Lorna's Pantry, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust Outsurance.
We're in the security industry. Every month, we save 1,488 rand with Outsurance. Just having made the switch from our previous service provider to Outsurance has allowed us to put another vehicle onto our fleet.
For your business insurance, contact Outsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
President Cyril Ramaphosa officially opened and addressed the Group of 20 Foreign Ministers meeting in Johannesburg yesterday. Hosted by South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamula, the two-day event takes place under the South African G20 presidency, and the theme there is solidarity, equality and sustainability. Let's bring into the conversation Sophie Mkwena, who is the international news editor at SABC. I got myself a bit confused there, Sophie. The G20 is 19 countries and the EU, right? Just to set the record straight there.
Yes, 19 countries, including the EU. Now with the AU, it is supposed to be 19 members, but it is still called G20 right. For now.
Right. So take us behind the scenes then and set the tone for us in terms of that meeting. Marco Rubio not in the house, but in terms of the makeup of the G20, it always makes for an interesting gathering, given its spread of members, the various regions represented, the various country formations represented. How was day one and President Cyril Ramaphosa's address to the G20 foreign ministers meeting?
The president address centered around a need for member states to work together to address challenges facing the world. And I think, as the DG pointed out and the Sherpa pointed out of South Africa, that the intention with foreign affairs meeting is to ensure that you deal with issues that are likely going to derail other streams or other meetings towards November, the summit of heads of state and government. You know that at times when we are discussing issues related to the economy, then political matters, global political matters or dynamics come in. And therefore, it is the role of foreign affairs ministers to look at those thorny issues. For example, the challenges of the relationship, political relationships, security. You deal with all of those issues. Currently, the main focus on issues related to conflict, you deal with those issues so that on the margins of other meetings that are looking at key issues. For example, you had a meeting in the Eastern Cape in Gqeberha where they were discussing issues related to almost unemployment, labor. You don't have a situation where a country brings in the issue of Ukraine, for example. So this is the role of these foreign affairs ministers, and the president called for synergy. And I think looking at and the people that we spoke to from different countries, they are really behind South Africa hosting of the summit later this year and supporting South Africa in terms of how it's dealing with some of the issues. Take, for example, issue of Ukraine. South Africa was being criticized by America, even America lobbying that South Africa must be isolated. You would recall those congressmen and senators writing that South Africa is supporting Russia. Now today, Ukraine relies on South Africa. We saw the president of Ukraine posting on X that he spoke to President Ramaphosa. South Africa is a strategic country, is an honest country. So that is why you have to deal with these issues, because politics, global politics can change.
So the other interesting dynamic, Sophie, is that the South Africa, Brazil and the United States form the troika in terms of the leadership, past, current and upcoming presidency. With Marco Rubio not being there, obviously some representation known in one form or another of the United States. Is anyone talking about the absence of the United States and its impact perhaps in managing the G20 process?
You know, the United States of America, the current administration, it has made so many big countries angry. I mean, your Canada, your Germany, your France. So at this moment, the view from many countries is that America cannot bully everybody all the time. So the work will continue with or without America, while they will continue to reach out to America to address the concerns that America has. For example, the president saying that when I asked him, is he in touch with President Trump to try and iron out these differences, him saying yes, they've embarked on that because no country is an island, but also making it clear that America must also be aware that the work is continuing and they are not going to wait for America to send their highest level delegation. And with the current delegation, they will continue. Nothing is going to stop the group to discuss what is supposed to be discussed. And therefore, I think many countries are really angry. You can hear, we spoke to some of these ministers on the issue of Ukraine. Europe is very angry. European Union is very angry. And now you have that shift. And America, by the time they wake up, they will realize after 4 years, whoever is coming, that many countries are taking a different posture against America. And whoever is coming will have to undo the damage.
So another interesting take while I was watching President Ramaphosa's opening address, it felt to me, and you can share your perspective, it felt to me as if he was going out of his way to explain something that not many people would have thought needs explaining in the international arena. The theme, solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Yes, you unpack it. What do you mean by that as the G20 president? But it felt to me as if it was specifically meant to address the misunderstanding, deliberate misunderstanding on the part of the United States that was communicated a few weeks ago, with it being characterized as South Africa is seeking to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) in the sense that it's understood in the US. Did you get that sense that he's going out of his way to explain almost in detail that he's talking about the international governance system more than any policy of DEI?
Yes, he was explaining that, but also in the context of the country. You cannot, particularly when you look at regions such as South America, the Caribbean, you look at regions such as Africa, where there was strong slavery and colonialism, you have to address inequity. And therefore, the president put it broadly that you have to address these issues. That even speaks to South Africa, because the gripe of America is that the redress in South Africa is aimed at sidelining or marginalizing the small minorities in the country. And that's the view even in America, where he has decided to sign an executive order doing away with redress in America, because in America, the Black African Americans are a minority, and therefore there were laws aimed at redress in that country because they were marginalized and they were treated badly when they arrived in America and all of that. So he has removed that, Donald Trump. He's signed an executive order dealing with issues that are aimed at that. So it's an issue here in South Africa and in America. But the president saying redress is important globally. We know even the AU summit that was just concluded centered around redress when they talk about reparations based on the impact of slavery. Including the climate change. When you talk about climate change, countries are most hard hit are the poorer countries, underdeveloped, and the developing countries, while the developed countries have options. And they are the ones who industrialized and caused all this mayhem when they were industrializing. And therefore, they have to redress those impact of industrialization that is now causing so much pain for developing countries that didn't use those methods. And I think the issue of redress and it's in that context, and the president speaking to both issues.
All right, thank you for that. That's Sophie Mkwena there, the SABC News International News Editor, reporting on the day one of the G20 Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting. Listening to that is Busisiwe Mavuso, who is the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. This, of course, as the G20 Ministers meeting get underway, the South African business is forging ahead with the B20 formation, which represents businesses within the country and connects them to G20 countries. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So this is a parallel process, is it not? Tell me about the B20 and the role that it plays. Politics shifts, there's always shifting sands, but I suppose you as business will want to keep focus on, make the main thing, and focus on doing business across these 20 territories.
Absolutely, and I think we're continuing as planned. So whatever is happening from a G perspective is definitely not affecting us at all, Thulasizwe. As you know, the B20 is the business voice of the G20, and what we do there is advocate for policies that drive economic growth and development. And I think that agenda and that intention is still stays the same, irrespective of the current geopolitics that are actually happening, at the moment. So we obviously deal with cross-cutting global issues. So if it's not just a South African thing, it's really a global thing. So there are issues, and I'm sure, in our discussions, without preempting any of the engagements that we're going to be having, I'm sure the issue of the tensions, global tensions, and how those affect the global economy is actually going to find expression. Definitely the issue of the US, and what the impact of some of those executive orders that Trump has been signing is definitely going to be of consideration. We are, however, guided by specific work under the task forces. There's 6 task forces that we actually work under as business. It's one on employment and education, it's one on trade and investment, and it's one on energy mix and just transition. There is digital transformation, there is integrity and compliance, and there is finance and infrastructure. So that work is definitely going to continue. There are going to be interesting conversations to be held, though, under trade and investment. And I think just the consideration of how that is going to be impacted, with the current shifts that are happening, from a geopolitics perspective.
Yeah, you take me to my next point, because I imagine that while you will not perhaps have the kinds of tensions that you see at the political level, you are the sector that then has to deal with the fallout. I was listening to a conversation about the tariffs and the possibility of South Africa being excluded from AGOA and how that would affect exports from South Africa to the United States. Are those the kinds of, hard-knuckle economics and trade conversations that you anticipate?
And I guess the issue of the tariffs is one that is going to affect so many countries, not just South Africa, right? I think South Africa might be affected from an AGOA perspective. But remember, Donald Trump has already, thrown bombs at so many countries already. I mean, there's there is Canada, there is Mexico, there is, I think, China, if I'm not mistaken, and all the tariffs that is imposing, for instance, on steel imports into the U.S. So I think all of those, so trade has been affected with the shifts, that are currently happening at the moment. And I think we're therefore going to have to bring in the World Trade Organization and start having a different conversation around, what does, I don't want to call it the instability of the U.S., but what does the shift, that is currently happening in the U.S. impacting, all of us? And what are some of those policy recommendations that we'd like to take to the G20, for their consideration? What do those look like? And I really think that we're going to have to try and wrap our heads, around that, as it were. But I think it's going to have to be, it's not going to be business as usual, but I guess we're going to have to continue as economies. We're going to have to find a way of how we actually open different supply chain lines. We're going to have to try and see, how we probably maybe replace the US, as a market, especially because it's not just South Africa that is actually affected. It's so many of us. Europe is largely affected as well. So this this year's G20 is actually going to be a very interesting one, Thulasizwe. And it's interesting because the reason why we chose as a theme from a government perspective, solidarity and equality through sustainable development, the solidarity part, we brought it in precisely because even then, before Trump came into power, we saw, that we're actually moving towards a world that is actually so fragmented. What does bridging that divide look like? And how do we then foster solidarity, in the light and in the wake of all these global tensions? And we're obviously going to have to be seized with that. But it's the first, it's unprecedented. But I think it's something definitely that we'll find, common ground and consensus on.
Yeah, you use the word unprecedented, and in a way, you preempt my shift from the global to the local. Let's talk a bit before, we part ways this morning. Let's talk about what happened a few days ago. On Wednesday, the budget was meant to be delivered by the Minister Enoch Godongwana. It was cancelled at the 11th hour. Just from your perspective as business leadership South Africa, what does that moment represent? And are you concerned? Is it the chaotic, dysfunctional GNU that some in sectors in our society see, or is this a case of exactly the kind of accountability you need, such that if there are unsound policies, they shouldn't even leave the starting gates of cabinet approval?
Yeah, so Thulasizwe, it's very unfortunate. It's hugely embarrassing. Surely the spectacle could have been avoided, and our disappointment as the business community stems from government's inability and failure to resolve their differences in time, their inability and failure to ensure that the institutional processes and systems function as they should. So it was very negative for business sentiment, and obviously the markets reacted to that as well. But the critical thing that we should not miss in all of this is that this shows that the parties of the GNU are able to stand their ground. It shows that they are not there to rubber stamp decisions of one political party. They are going to push back against positions that they don't believe in. And that is what, we as South Africans voted for. That is where South Africa is right now. It can't be business as usual. But we need to ensure that as they do that, they should demonstrate that as they try and work through their differences, they can therefore lead us through an outcome that will be better for the economy and that will be better for the country. So we are expecting a budget on the 12th of March, and we are confident as the business community that it will be one that is backed by the majority of government, or at least, the majority of the GNU.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Busisiwe Mavuso, who is the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. Let's check in now with Ann Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the South African Law Reform Commission is calling on the public to comment on non-trial resolutions for corruption cases. Firefighters are still deployed to fires that have been burning for several days in Wellington in the Boerland and are now also battling a blaze that broke out in the Witzenberg Valley in the Cape Winelands. And President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will continue to seek an audience with the United States of America with the aim of discussing issues of concern to the White House. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here's a quick summary of the major delays across the country. The R80 Mapori Highway heavy leading Shoshanguve into that crash at XX. It's still on the go. Interestingly, the alternative M35 is now just as heavy. That run into Ondersport full of diverting traffic pressures. Just zooming in on Centurion, it looks like parts of Rabi and John Foster are finally being reopened. That's after a couple of days of closures due to flooding and the resultant flood damage in that part of Centurion. The M12 coming into El Dorado Park from Lenasia State. Heavy. It's a crash before the Golden Highway. Exiting at Klipspruit Valley Road would be your last chance to get out of that, really. Durban, the roadwork overrun on the M4 at Jacob, still there. Very heavy coming off the N2 this morning on your way into Durban. A breakdown before Spaghetti Junction on the N2 south, backlogging traffic through to Umgena roadside. And Cape Town's N7 is a bit of a traffic disaster going north from sort of Casino all the way to Frans Conradie's heavy, and then from Frans Conradie heading down to Voortrekker Road. There's some real pressure there as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning to you, Zai, once again. So, Zamalek, right? This is a name, if you are of a particular age in South Africa, you will remember Zamalek very well.
Yo.
In the early days of us starting to understand, the African Champions League. Stellenbosch have drawn Zamalek in the African Champions League.
That's a big name, Stellies. I mean, what are Stellenbosch known for? Fine wine?
Yeah.
And Zamalek? So I don't know how the
Zamalek.
Zamalek, we're going to have to handle you. Let me tell you, I think the Cape Townians have got what it takes to handle the Egyptians, because Zamalek are 5-time CAF Champions League winners. And you know what? Steve Barker says they're not too big for his team. They were drawn against the holders Zamalek quarterfinal African Confederation Cup, a draw that was conducted in Doha, Qatar yesterday. Stellenbosch have reached the last 8 in their maiden appearance in the competition after finishing as runners-up to Renaissance Berkane of Morocco in Group B. Stellenbosch will host the first leg of the quarterfinal tie on the 3rd of April, with the return match away in Cairo 1 week later. Now, Orlando Pirates and Mamelodi Sundowns have sidestepped each other in the CAF Champions League quarterfinals. The Buccaneers remain the only unbeaten team in the tournament, and they will face Algeria's Mouloudia Alger, a side with a rock-solid defence that have kept 7 clean sheets in 10 games. Sundowns, meanwhile, will take on Esperance of Tunisia in a repeat of last year's semi-final, where the Brazilians suffered a narrow 2-1-0 defeats. Elsewhere, Egyptian powerhouse Al Ahly, winners of a record 12 CAF Champions League titles, will battle Al Hilal, the Sudanese club that's forced to play in Mauritania due to the ongoing civil war. First leg kicks off on the 1st of April, with return legs on the 8th of April. You can catch it live on SABC Sport. Cricket action. The Proteas captain Themba Bavuma has laid down expectations for the ICC Champions Trophy as their campaign gets underway today against Afghanistan. Having arrived nearly a fortnight ago in Pakistan, during which they've played several practice games against the hosts and New Zealand. This has also helped the team acclimatise, and the captain Bavuma expects solid batting performances.
I think in terms of the conditions, we've had a nice look at what to expect. Probably better friendly wickets, and I think quite a nice challenge for the bowlers. So I think probably our challenge as a bowling unit is to be probably one of the more disciplined and precise bowling units. And I guess always look for opportunities to take wickets. And I think from a batting point of view, scoreboard pressure is a big thing. So guys getting in, making sure they go get big, so we can challenge for those 330, 340, 350 type of scores. So I think with all of that, it should be exciting.
Now, Shubman Gill scored an unbeaten century after Mohammad Shami took 5 wickets off 53 balls. India began their Champions Trophy campaign with a 6-wicket win over Bangladesh. Tennis action, the world number 2, Iga Swiatek, lost to a player younger than 18 for the 4th time. She was stunned by Mira Andreeva in the Dubai Championship 6-3, 6-3. Elsewhere, Felix Auger-Aliassime advanced to the semi-finals of the Qatar Open when Daniel Medvedev retired, and that's from their quarterfinal clash with an illness. And finally, some rugby news. This time it is the Blitzbokke. They are prepping themselves for excitement that's ahead of their Sevens tournament that's taking place in Canada. And of course, their coach Philip Snyman had this to say ahead of their tough encounters.
We have the players. Obviously, we made 1 or 2 changes, tactical changes, and one due to injury. But I think for us, the first focus will be New Zealand, a very tough pool. And that first game against New Zealand will be crucial to lay a solid foundation and to build on that. And I think if we can man up against New Zealand and take them on physically in the first couple of minutes and get ball position and starve them from ball, our playmakers will do the job when it comes to finish the game.
That's a wrap of your morning brief sport headlines, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The business update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again in Dowling. You will not find, I argue, you will not find many people who will see a silver lining to the cloud that is the tariffs that are being imposed by the US President Donald Trump. But 1 or 2 people, Hulamin being one of those that are seeing a silver lining to that cloud.
That's right, Thulas. A small company listed on the JSE that's based in Pietermaritzburg. They are a local aluminium group, and they have in fact said that Trump's tariffs may work in their advantage. Earlier this month, the Trump administration announced plans to impose a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminium imports into the U.S. Now, Hulaman says this is expected to level the playing field. The company had been subject to a 10% flat rate duty introduced in 2018, but the new 25% tariff will replace this duty entirely, affecting imports from all countries, including those previously exempt like Japan, Canada, Mexico, and the EU. Now, Hulaman currently exports 11% of its rolled products to the US. The group believes the new tariff will have no impact on its competitive position in the US market, as all its competitors will be subject to the same 25% tariff. In fact, Hulaman expects its competitive position to improve, as the removal of exemptions will put all imports on an equal footing. The company anticipates that the volumes, or rather its volumes and margins in the US market will remain unchanged, but it acknowledges that the imposition of tariffs by the US is a dynamic situation, and shifts in Washington's policy could change this outlook. The group's share price rallied following the news, ending the day 9.6% higher.
In other company news, tell me about Adcock Ingram. You're saying that the market conditions have made it a bit tough for them. The going is a bit tough for them?
It is, Thulas, the pharmaceutical manufacturer reporting disappointing interim results, with earnings falling 9% due to a constrained consumer environment and reduced demand for certain key brands. Now, the company that houses brands like Panado and Compral reported a 0.6% decrease in revenue. Gross margins also took a hit, declining from 34% to 32.6% due to an unfavorable sales mix and lower production levels at the Wadeville facility. Now, the group's consumer division saw a mere 1% increase in revenue, while the over-the-counter segment reported a 4% decline in revenue. The prescription segment also saw a 5% decline in revenue to 1.6 billion rand. So I don't know if no one is buying Panado, if no one's buying Compral. What's happening? Unless we're just relying on those home remedies.
We've got enough headaches with all the issues we're dealing with, so they should hang in there. The market will improve.
It will at some point. At some point, it'll turn around. Their hospital business, however, showed strong growth of about 10% to 1.1 billion rands. Now, company CEO Andy Hall attributed the disappointing results to the slowdown in the independent and pharmaceutical wholesale channels, as well as reduced inventory holdings by wholesalers. But he noted that the company has retained its position as the number one pharmaceutical player in the South African private market. Now, analysts have expressed concerns about the lack of top-line growth, which has resulted in margin pressure for the company.
All right, lastly, Ndauling, please give us another recap of market activity here at home and elsewhere in the world.
Kicking things off in Asia, markets rebounding and now trading mostly in the green. This mainly boosted by Asian tech stocks. Alibaba delivered upbeat results, pushing its share price to a 3-year high, and the Hong Kong Hang Seng really benefiting from the revived tech rally, trading over 3% higher this hour. Over in Wall Street, futures flat, just under the flat line, as trade jitters and Walmart's outlook weighs on sentiment. Back at home, markets upbeat, with the all-share closing 0.8% higher in yesterday's trading session. Resources really fueling that uptick as gold trades at record highs. The rand also strengthening amid a softer dollar. It's sitting at 18.34 to the greenback this hour.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ndauling Lechela. She'll be back with one more update in which she'll give you a sense of what the markets will be looking like on this Friday. Look out for that, and that's coming up just after 8:30 here on The Morning Brief.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Say good morning to Advocate Sipho Mantula. Raz, good morning. So I did not see this one coming, I must say. Conventional wisdom says Rwanda is cozy with Israel and therefore cozy with the United States. But it would seem the U.S. president, the Trump administration, has moved swiftly against some authorities in Rwanda in relation to the DRC war.
Jumbo Africa, Thulas, and refreshing morning to the listeners. Indeed, Thulas, what we have said, we see the Treasury sanctions against Rwanda ministers and senior militants of M23. We are talking about the name James Kabarebe, who has been highlighted as one of the key persons who has been involved in supporting the M23. Now, as you know, Thulas, when you have the Office of Foreign Assets Control of the U.S. imposing sanctions, it means that there is a link of what we've been seeing in the Eastern DRC. The same James Kabarebe has been seen as a central person also in the mineral extraction in the DRC, Thulas. He's a former RDF general. He's a current Minister of State for Regional Integration in the Rwandan Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So he has been highlighted, he has been flagged out to us, as we know that even the UN Security Council yesterday, they've been engaging on this issue of the Eastern DRC. How do you deal with the negative forces and the role of Rwanda?
Tell me about this commission that has been looking into how long it will take or how long it should take for Niger to transition from the current situation of military rule to civilian rule.
Remember, Thulas, all along, the military junta under General Chini, it was all about, they wanted a 3-year transition, but the commission has now recommended a 5-year transition of a time frame back to the civilian rule. That coup in Niger in 2023 is almost 2 years down the line to us, and as we know that Niger has pulled out of ECOWAS. Now this commission is still saying that the power must rest with the military until you go for what we call electoral process and you bring back power to the civilian. This shows to us that indeed in the Sahel we see the new dynamic of how we define democracy and how do we define representation. But this has given strength to a junta-led to say that it will only give power towards obviously in 2029 or 2030.
Some concerning news coming out of Antananarivo in Madagascar, and this has to do with the arrest of a journalist there. What's that about?
Fernando Selo Thulas is just the guy who has been detained last month for a Facebook post about President Andry Rajoelina. Now, as you know, Thulas, the committee that even protects journalists is calling for his immediate release. This has been the challenges that we find in the island of Madagascar, Thulas, that when the journalists attack the government, they are always been saying they are undermining national security. Now, some of the relatives of these journalists have been saying that they've been serious assaults and even reprisals against these journalists. But as I said, the journalists are now pledging in solidarity for the release of these investigative journalists who have been challenging the government of Andry Rajoelina in Madagascar. Antananarivo.
So when I was based in Zimbabwe, when I support, they used to say in Shona, "Visai ma sanctions, wow, remove those sanctions there." Yep. It seems that cry is finally being heard. Some 2 decades since the targeted sanctions were imposed.
This since 2002, you'll recall, and it was during the time of the late President Robert Mugabe, when the EU had to had to have sanctions against the Zimbabwe state-owned defense industry. But remember, even if you are finally removing them, they still retain what we will call an oversight. They are still looking at what will happen in terms of the Zimbabwean improvement. But one looks at that the EU has been moving around the SADC. They've just met Minister Lamola. Now, it seems that when you look at the Zimbabwean issue of the Zim defense industry, this is great news, but at the same time, it has to look at the militarization and capacity building of Zimbabwe's military, that they should never rely on the European states because once you have the freezing of assets by the Europeans, it still says a lot about our military capability in the continent as well as in the SADC region.
Yeah. And lastly, in your historical archives, 2 historical figures that you are focusing on, one with links to Zimbabwe, but also one that has connections to the African continent in the United States.
Tulas, I've thought that, this day, they call it Robert Mugabe's Day in Zimbabwe. When he was born in 1924, he'll have been 101 years old. But they have put aside this day to dedicate it to the youth of Zimbabwe. It has been set aside in 2017 when Emerson Mnangagwa came into power to say they will set aside 21 February as a day for the youth of Zimbabwe dedicated to Robert Mugabe. We have said it's also 60 years since the assassination of Malcolm X, who was killed in a Harlem ballroom in New York. We have known about this issue of Malcolm X, Thulas, about his assassination at the age of 39, very young and very determined about the issues that affects the continent as well as the African, those who are based in America. Very interesting archive, Thulas, as we are looking at our Black History Month.
Yeah.
The two great leaders from Zimbabwe as well as Malcolm X in the U.S. Asante sana, Thulas, as we are still in a conversation, SAFM observing the Black History Month.
Sipho, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mantula with your Africa update. Just a sampling and a flavor of some of the stories dominating on the continent, or perhaps bubbling under, as well as the African diaspora.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OutSurance.
I'm in tourism. I'm running a guest house here. When I switched over to OutSurance, it was very simple and convenient. I used the savings to subsidize my solar installations. Switching to OutSurance was one of the best decisions I made insurance-wise, yes.
For your business insurance, contact OutSurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
A convicted murderer on death row, a vicar in a quiet English town, and a maths teacher trapped in a cellar cross paths in the most unexpected way. Jefferson Grief is on death row in an American prison for brutally murdering his wife. But it turns out that Grief has a gift. He can solve crimes from inside his cell. English journalist Beth Davenport needs Grief's help. Janice, a woman who recently helped Beth, has gone missing. The last Beth heard from Janice? A text with a blurry image of a man lunging towards the camera. Will Grief crack the case in time? Exactly how is Janice's local vicar involved? And is it really possible to solve a crime before it is committed? Tune into Inside Man, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Starts 12 February only on S3. Open up.
Borussia Dortmund and FC Union Berlin are both searching for a decent position in the top half. They have a big battle for maximum points. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch Borussia Dortmund FC versus FC Union Berlin on Saturday, 22 February at 7:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Some delays getting into Santa. There's been a crash on Grayston Drive near Linden Street. So it's coming away from Ravoni Road, if you like, leaving Santa. And it's quite a heavy backlog, but there's also a bit of onlooking going on with motors coming off the N1 highway being caught up in that as well. So from sort of Bramley Park, coming out of Weinberg side, Grayston Drive over the highway and down through to sort of Daisy Street, that's all heavy. And because that's so heavy, there's a really big queue that's formed up on the Mike 1 North from Caller Drive to get off and to get into Grayston. Crash on the R24, the airport highway, just coming onto the N12 merge, so a bit of queuing pressure there. The N12 from Lenasia and Protea Glen up to Eldorado Park still being held by a crash near the Golden Highway exit. And the N14, on your way to Pretoria, this is the Krugersdorp Highway, quite a heavy backlog after the R55 Pretoria West exit, moving up towards the Brockfontein interchange. Still queues out of Shoshengu there. Crash on the Mopani Highway at XX, and alternative route seekers jamming the M35 Soutpan Road as you go into the Onderstepoort area. Durban, the roadworks on the M4 have had a major impact this morning. They overran at Jacobs. The good news is all lanes are open. The roadworks on your way to Durban have been lifted and the traffic queue is eased substantially. Crash on the M13. This is a fatal collision involving a pedestrian near the N3 Sherwood. So if you're around that sort of run-in from Westfield, the M13 is just under more pressure through the roadworks on the N2 bridge and down towards that crashing. And Cape Town looks like an issue just unfolding on the R300. All of a sudden, some queues both ways between Van Riebeek Road and Stellenbosch Arterial. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
ever since Uspilion won 5,000 rand, 5 tower on Wheel of Fortune, he only wears white push-in sandals, star white, Baba, and he owns 10 identical pairs. Before he did not even know the Queen's language. Now, Kalabo, wow. Chance, let's watch Wheel of Fortune weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7:30 on S3 and see how one spin changed Spillion's life and how it can change ours as well in just one day.
All right, let's talk TV licenses. Did you know that paying your TV license isn't just about legalities? It helps fund local productions and creates jobs in the entertainment industry. That means more epic dramas, exciting sports, and news that keeps us informed. So, when was the last time you checked yours? Visit tvlic.co.za and make sure you are up to date. After all, it's your screen, your story. Hashtag your screen, your story.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
6 minutes to 8. Let's focus on this tragic story now. Heavy rainfalls across Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal are set to subside after causing widespread flooding and loss of life. The severe weather triggered landslides, particularly in Adams Mission and Gwamakuta in KwaZulu-Natal, resulting in fatalities. In response to this, the eThekwini municipality says it is working on improving climate resilience by investing in ecological infrastructure and stabilizing slopes. Let's speak now to Thulasizwe Simelane, who is the KwaZulu-Natal Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs MEC. Good morning to you, MEC, and thank you for your time. So just an update for us, if you can, of where we stand in terms of the widespread rescue operations and efforts to try and move people to safer grounds in areas such as Gwamakuta and Adams Mission. Where do we stand in terms of that effort as well as the impact on livelihoods and lives of people?
Good morning, Thulasizwe, and to all the SAFM listeners. Indeed, we have emerged from a very, very painful period. Because 2 days ago, there were heavy rains around the province of KwaZulu-Natal, but especially around eThekwini, KwaMakuta, Isipingo, Folweni, where unfortunately we ended up losing 6 lives due to the mudslides and the structural collapse, because there was a couple where the house collapsed while they were inside. And also a young child in Eshowe who was swept away while trying to cross a river 2 days ago. And before that, last week, we had lost 5 people who drowned at Opongolo and lost their lives. So really, we have been devastated by the latest disaster. But our disaster teams are on the ground, all the government departments in KwaZulu-Natal, to respond to the crisis, but also to move people away, because very tragically, people tend to build their homes on areas which are flood prone. So we are assessing the damage, but we have been able to move people to safer places so that we start the process of rebuilding their homes.
So if I, just from the maths, I'm sorry to put it in this way, but, you know, for the interest of understanding the full scale of the disaster, how many people have died from the recent floods? I was listening as you were mentioning the incidents. Are we still talking about 6 people that have died?
Well, we're still standing on 6 people that have died in the last 2 days. And we are hoping that there will be no more fatalities. Yes. 25 people have completely lost their homes, which have been completely destroyed. 7 people have been severely injured. And therefore, it poses a challenge to us to say, going forward as a province, how do we plan better for these disasters and how do we consolidate our efforts, even with social partners, to respond in the most appropriate way.
MEC, what are the immediate needs of the people that are affected? And I ask you this given the constraints that we all know and are very familiar with in terms of the resources that are available for you as authorities. As you are saying, you are moving people who are in flood-prone areas to safer ground and safer areas and spaces. But what are the immediate needs on your part as well as those communities?
Well, the most immediate need is shelter, which we are providing as government. But obviously, the issue of blankets, because people have lost all their belongings. We are also providing hot meals. But we do appeal to our social partners and especially to the business sector to come on board so that we have a coordinated response. Just yesterday, I signed MOUs with a range of independent organizations who are also now contributing as partners to the issue of disaster relief in the province.
Yeah. And lastly, MEC, let's tease out this issue around climate resilience. The eThekwini municipality is talking about investing in ecological infrastructure and stabilizing slopes. How do you foresee that becoming a standard practice across the province of KwaZulu-Natal? Because indeed, you need not be an expert to observe that as you drive in parts of KwaZulu-Natal, some of the properties and homes are situated on slopes that even from the untrained eye, it does look like the disaster could occur under conditions of heavy rainfalls.
I think that is the trend we are all following of investing in climate resilient infrastructure. But the major question which we need to address as government is the issue of land, because we need to settle our people on land that is properly developed with bulk infrastructure, with access to transport, so that they can move away from building their homes on these slopes. So therefore, we need really a comprehensive approach which would look at all those issues.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Thulasizwe Simelane, who is the KwaZulu-Natal Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs MEC. That brings us to 8 a.m. and Musa on standby with your latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30760. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, public comments sought on how the justice system can be transformed, and South Africa committed to a good relationship with the United States. Good morning. The South African Law Reform Commission is calling on the public to comment on non-trial resolutions for corruption cases. The Commission says non-trial resolutions should be used for individuals or companies accused of corruption where they admit responsibility without a finding of guilt. This forms part of its discussion papers on the amendments needed in the Criminal Procedure Act. Anti-corruption lawyer Colette Ashton says the accused should still not go unpunished.
The South African Law Reform Commission is considering that in exchange for a finding of not guilt but responsibility, the implicated company or individual would have to pay substantial penalties and show genuine cooperation in handing over information to law enforcement that can be used in the investigation of high-level individuals, information that law enforcement agencies could never get without cooperation from the inside.
Eastern Cape communities are pinning their hopes on the Premier Oscar Mabuyane to come up with tangible solutions to the socio-economic challenges they are facing. Poverty, crime and unemployment are hampering economic development in the province. Mabuyane will deliver his State of the Province address for the 7th administration today. Political analyst Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast says government needs to strengthen its relations with the private sector to create the much-needed jobs.
Another problem of the Eastern Cape, which feeds into underdevelopment, is the fact that the economy is not diversified. If you look at, for instance, cities like Nelson Mandela Bay and Buffalo City, the majority of people, they tend to be employed in the automotive sector. So there is a need for diversification of the economy so that economic activities can be increased.
The pre-trial hearing of former personal assistant of the then Free State Premier Ace Magashule will be heard in the Free State High Court today. Murwadi Chulota and 17 co-accused, including Magashule and his businessman Edwin Sodi, are facing fraud and corruption charges relating to the 2014 asbestos roof removal project. Earlier this year, Chulota told the High Court that she will appeal the court's decision, which dismissed her application to have her arrest and extradition from the US declared unlawful and unconstitutional. Firefighters are still deployed to fires that have been burning for several days in Wellington in the Boerland and are now also battling a blaze that broke out in the Witzenberg Valley in the Cape Winelands. Cape Winelands municipal spokesperson Joanne Otters says the fire spread overnight, fueled by strong winds and dry conditions. She says ground teams and aerial support are actively working on putting out the fire, but in inaccessible areas, dense vegetation is making their job difficult.
The fire in the Witzenberg Valley started on Thursday morning in the upper slopes of the mountain on the Tilbach side. It is currently burning into the farmland of Wakkerstroom and Oplaas. The team of 3 firefighting vehicles and crew and 1 ground team are currently engaged in active firefighting and crop protection. As we enter day 4 of the fire in Wellington, teams report that they have spent a very frustrating night in very hot conditions.
And finally, President Cyril Ramaphosa says South Africa will continue to seek an audience with the United States of America with the aim of discussing issues of concern to the White House. This after the U.S. criticized South Africa on its Expropriation Act. Addressing the media on the margins of the G20 Foreign Affairs meeting in Johannesburg, President Ramaphosa said diplomatic relations are the only means to resolve differences between countries.
We are committed to having a good relationship with the United States, and we do relate to them in a number of ways. We will, in the diplomatic process, be able to have those matters discussed, to have those matters dealt with, so that we are able to iron out wrinkles that may have appeared in our relationship.
Recapping the top story, the South African Law Reform Commission is calling on the public to comment on non-trial resolutions for corruption cases. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
It's the month for secret admirers, but it's no secret that with Outsurance, you could save big on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Monthly savings or cash in your pocket. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow out of Shoshanguve this morning. XX, that crash on the Mopani Highway, still having a delay, and the alternative route probably even busier now than the Mopani Highway, so quite a queue on Serpine Road going into the Ondersteport area. Joburg, not too bad on the highways, with the exception of a crash on the R24 as you merge onto the N12 coming in from the airport towards Gillies, and a bit of traffic between Randburg and Sunning Hill on the N1 this morning. Durban, still with a breakdown on the N2 going southbound into Spaghetti Junction. This vehicle, as has been the case lately, is just staying there much longer than it normally should do. So from Umgena Road down to 4 level, it's heavy. A lot of pressure on the M13 around that N2 bridge as well. And another breakdown just being reported N2 south at Kwamashu. So coming through from Gateway, there's your first queue and your second queue going in towards Spaghetti Junction. And Cape Town's just been a crash. It's a pedestrian involved, R300. It's southbound between Van Riebeek Road and Stellenbosch Arterial. So there's a big queue if you're trying to get through to Delft or the N2 highway, but also on the northbound, it's having quite an impact, slowing things up as well. Just a heads up, if you're into Stellenbosch, unbelievably on a Friday, it's even heavier. All approaches into Stellenbosch are on a heavy jam. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, cricket, the Proteas will kick off their Champions Trophy campaign against Afghanistan today. And in golf, Tiger Woods has joined the PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan in a second White House meeting with US President Donald Trump. All these stories and more at around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
8 minutes after 8 on this Friday. Hey, good morning, folks. We're into the third hour of the morning brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. Well, we've started quite a few conversations in the last 2 hours, and I look forward to engaging you on some of those issues that we have raised. We've been talking about the issue of police uniforms being fitted with body cameras. This is an attempt to deal with such issues as corruption within the ranks of the SAPS, but also, to safeguard the police officers' interaction with the public. The Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, telling us that there'll be the start of a limited rollout of body cams, starting with about 100 cameras or so in April this year, at the cost of some 29,000 rand per camera, and what is budgeted for the first year is 2.88 million rand. That's what we are told will be the cost initially. So at about 20 past 8, we will be focusing on that, but do feel free to weigh in whether or not you believe that would make a difference in dealing with instances of corruption within the SAPS, but also instances of claims of abuse by members of the police. And also, I don't know, to what extent would the police officers, for example, be able to just simply switch off these cameras such that there's absolutely no recording of the interaction with a member of the public? And would that lead to consequences? Should it lead to consequences? Because I'm of the view that when you've got body cams, dash cams, they should always be on, such that everything that happens behind the dash cam at the back of the car, you go from a rebuttable presumption that whatever you did outside of the view of the camera, you wanted to do it there because you didn't want it to be caught on camera, and therefore it's presumed to be unlawful until you can prove that it was all lawful. I don't know. Weigh in on some of these. How do we solve for these issues? We've also been talking geopolitics in the wake of South Africa hosting the G20 summit and the meeting of foreign ministers, which is underway in Johannesburg. Those are some of the issues. ANC reconfiguration, whether or not it will lead to the ANC being restored to its former glory. Feel free to weigh in on all of those topics. The number to dial 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes. Please send them to 061 410 4107. I always forget to mention we are at SAFM Radio on all our socials, right? So you can even follow us even on our YouTube channel at SAFM Radio. That's simple. And also SAFM Radio on Facebook. All right, this is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Friday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Whether you're having a early, snoozy, tantrumy, chill. Frustrating. Or jokey. Morning. Mornings love McDonald's, so choose happy and enjoy a Burry Burger Double and a short filter coffee for only R39.90 from 6 to 10:30 a.m. at McDonald's.
It's time to shine for young athletes across South Africa. From thrilling football and rugby matches to intense netball games. Experience the passion and prowess of Mzansi's finest young sports stars. Super Sports Schools and SABC Plus bring you the specially curated channel dedicated entirely to school and youth sports. Join us as we celebrate their achievements and bring the excitement right to your screens. This is your chance to support the future of South African sports. The Super Sports Schools channel on SABC Plus, where every game is a home game. Don't miss a moment. Download the SABC Plus app today. Available on iOS, Google, and Smart TV. Or visit sabc-plus.com to start streaming. Super Sports Schools on SABC Plus. All the sport you care about most. Now streaming wherever you are.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
Right, let me hear from you now. What's on your mind this morning? Let me start with Lesiba in Khobokwane. Good morning to you, Lesiba. The ANC on your mind this morning. What about the ANC?
Yes, good morning, Tula, and good morning to your producer and listeners of SFM. And thanks for taking my call. You see, I just want to talk about what should have happened on Wednesday, where Minister Kodongwana was expected to deliver his finance speech. But it seems as if some of the members of cabinet, especially members coming from the ANC as a majority party, seem not to understand the word government of national unity. Because the statement of intent, it is very clear how these parties that are forming government of national unity are going to work. You can't work in a government of national unity, develop a budget, not consult other members, even if it was very clear at the cabinet Lokota that this thing is not going to happen, especially on the increment of the, the increment of VAT with 2%, it's got a far-reaching implication. You can't even wait opposition party to look. The SARS commissioner, a person who's got a high morale, who has been respected by everybody, is rejecting, is giving you advice where to get money, and we should not even increase this VAT. You work against it, you gossip to the extent that you go to Parliament to deliver the speech that was not agreed. It was an embarrassment. Other members of cabinet, like coming from the DA and other parts, when they want to present things that have got a far-reaching implication, they must go through the cabinet. Agree, because we are not ruling as the ANC alone. We are ruling with other political parties and even members of the ANC. We now understand for the next 5 years some of the resolution that we took, especially the national health insurance, the Bella bill, because we can't agree with the majority partner, which is the DA. It might not even happen this 5 years, and the poor, we know that if we need to correct these things, we must make sure that in the next election we give the ANC majority. But for now, we must work with all the parties.
Thank you for that.
And agree.
Gotta move on. Thank you, Lesiba in Khobokwane. Thank you for that. Let me take a call from Bond in Gqeberha. Good morning to you, Bond. You want to talk to me about the reconfiguration of the leadership of the ANC, Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. Yeah.
Good morning, Tulas, and to the listeners. I can see you're in good form today, but I want to dampen it a little bit. You remember not long ago you were taken to court for referring to the multi-party government as the government of national unity. Yes. There is no concept in the constitution of the ANC calling reconfigured PECs or whatever. There is nothing like that in the spirit and letter. The rules that apply there are Rule 12 and 19. Rule 19 is self-containing who the membership should be or the structure should be. 3 elements. It's elected members, number 2, co-opted members, number 3, ex-officio members. So what has happened here is what is already contained or required by the regulation, co-opted. And no member should be shifted or have a co-ownership unless due process is undergone. So no one should have lost their post there. There should have been a co-option. NEC should have persuaded the PEC to act in terms of Rule 19 without imposing their powers, because Rule 12 says NEC can only intervene to ensure that there's democratic functioning and effectively. It has got only 2 powers to suspend or dissolve a PEC. Suspension is only for 3 months, and dissolution means 9 months, and then there'll be election. Yes, later on it's got a generic power of ensuring that it can take whatever steps to ensure that the aims and objectives of ANC are fulfilled. But even doing that, it must observe due process.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yes.
So this was overbearing. It was not necessary. Those members must persuade the NEC to say that their removal or call chairpersonship is unconstitutional and they should be reinstated without going to court.
Yeah, Bond, thank you for that. I do suspect that the ANC will have a bit of explaining to do to their structures as well, how that fits in with the framework that Bond points to there in terms of what the constitution of the ANC provides for versus what the ANC has done. Many commentators have said this is a dissolution by another name. You just don't want to call it that we've dissolved these structures because you're aware that the implications would be dire. You're just simply calling it a reconfiguration, something that is not provided for in the constitution of the ANC. Mike in Newlands, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about sanctions?
Thanks. I do indeed, Thulasizwe. I just think that listening to your lady, forgive me now, I've totally forgotten her name, who does your international affairs, she was making a very good point, but I thought the point was a bit misled. But one thing we have not accepted in South Africa, well, certainly a lot of us don't want to accept the fact is, yes, Trump is indeed making life misery for many countries around the world, because what he's doing is equalizing the cost of the rates and taxes they put on their trade. What we're doing in South Africa is that when we imposed nil compensation, we lost a particular contract that gave us a benefit to the tune of 100,000 jobs. And that we mustn't forget. We can't keep playing that off against the fact that Trump is doing the same to us as he's doing to other countries. That is not correct. And then the other thing just to mention is it came up on your show the other day. Expropriation without compensation, Thulasizwe. Yes, certainly it happens all around the world. But what was made different, and I understood it yesterday on John Sherika's show when AfriForum came on, and they explained it very nicely. Here in South Africa now, unlike the rest of the world except in Zimbabwe and Venezuela, they can come into my house, they can knock on the door, they can give me a letter and say, we're buying your house for 500,000 rand. I say it's worth $1 million. They say it's not. I've got 7 days to move out of my house, and then they say you can go to court. Well, if I go to court, I've got to wait 3 years to fight them in the High Court, and that would cost me more money than obviously I've got, and the government would fight me with all the money they've got, which is the taxpayers' money. So therefore, I will be out of my house. I will have to accept possibly what the government gives me, if they give me anything at all, and then I have absolutely no recourse. And this is all done. Listen, this is the scary part, Thulasizwe. We should all worry about, including yourself. It could be one of these corrupt municipalities, and we've got hundreds of them in this country, that one official can come along to your house in any one of these municipalities.
Gotcha. Mike, I've got to move on. Thank you. Mike, you're saying I should worry. Personally, I'm not worried. I know that I live in a country with enough checks and balances. I've read the act as it stands now, and I'm comforted. I'm comforted that it is not expropriation without compensation, as was contemplated at some point when there was talk about amending our constitution. It is expropriation with the provision that under certain circumstances, the fair and equitable amount can be calculated to be nil. But even if that doesn't stack up against our constitution, I'm comforted knowing that if it is unconstitutional, as I've said before, in 2 years' time, you and I will not be talking about this act because it will be a thing of the past. I'm comforted knowing that I live in a country with the rule of law that is quite strong. That's as much as I can say about that. Bajo in Soweto, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about the issue of body cameras?
Yes, man. Yeah, thanks to I think one is you mentioned something about consequences. I think there should be severe consequences for those traffic policers that switch off their cameras on duty. Severe, that to an extent that they take their provident funds away, and also they face dismissal. Severe, because we face a serious issue when it comes to crime. But the other issue that I wanted to raise with you is that we have 5 multi-layered categories of law enforcement. We have the private security, we have the Metro Police, we have the provincial traffic police, we have the national traffic police, we have the crime prevention wardens, we also have SEPs. That takes us to 6 law enforcement. But crime is still crazy. Let me talk about Gauteng. Crime is still mad in Gauteng. So honestly, this is a welcome intervention. It took time, But I just hope that it happens speedily and very quickly.
Hey, Shwena Bajo, we'll talk about it in the next few minutes. You will hear the details. It doesn't seem like it will be as speedily as you are hoping. I think the initial phase is just 5 years of a rollout. The initial one, just 100. But it is a start, I agree. All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. That's Bajo there in Soweto. Thank you for those calls. We'll make time for more of these interactions a bit later on the show.
Santam can cover your car in just 2 minutes. That's faster than sticking to your New Year's resolution to eat healthy, then immediately reaching for the leftover pizza in the fridge and deciding it's a reward for surviving day one. Get your car covered in just 2 minutes so you can live in the moment, not in the worry. Visit santam.co.za. Santam. This is freedom. Santam is an authorized FSP, a licensed non-life insurer and controlling company for its group companies.
The Chili Boys have a top-class game plan to relocate from the bottom half. But Babina Noko prefer a position in the top 5. This is the Betway Premiership. United battles it out with United. Witness Mzansi's beautiful game. Chipa United FC versus Sikukune United FC. This Saturday, 22 February at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and at 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
23 minutes after 8, the Police Minister Senzo Mchunu has announced that the South African Police Service, the SAPS, will begin implementing body cameras starting on April the 1st. This move is expected to enhance policing procedures and document interactions between officers and the public. It is a move that has been praised by unions, political parties and activists, while concerns have been raised about the costs involved. Let's speak to Chad Thomas, who is an IRS Forensic Investigations representative. Good morning to you, Chad. Talk to me about this concept of body cams. It is used widely in countries such as the United States. Until now, it has not been part of our law enforcement in South Africa. How much of a difference is it likely to make in some of the ills that we observe in interactions between police officers and the public?
Very good morning to you and the listeners. Look, this is a very positive development in respect of the way in which we are going to be able to face law and order problems, both from the perspective of a police officer who could face frivolous or vexatious claims of unnecessary force, as well as from the victim's perspective or the suspect's perspective, or a citizen that's caught up in between a matter that's taking place that needs police intervention. Police body cams bolster public trust. They provide community members with transparency into the police actions. They allay citizens' concerns. And what's most important is it's solid tamper-proof evidence that can form part of an ironclad chain of custody, which means that a video and the footage can be used as evidence for arrests and prosecutions, but at the same time can also be used as citizens if they believe that the police are overstepping their boundaries.
Just on that last point, I suppose, Chad, that it became clear over the years that there is demand for, at least from the public's perspective, for them to have their interests safeguarded by some kind of a video recording. And I say that, and I suggest to you that became clear over the years based on the number of times we've seen incidents where a member of the public feels that I don't like this interaction with this officer and therefore I'm going to switch on my video. Am I correct in that line of reasoning?
Look, we live in a very digital age, and people are using their cell phones more and more. They're using their dash cams more and more. They're using CCTV footage in and around their residential and commercial properties. We even have cameras up on our highways and on intersections. So it is vitally important that we can see what's happening. It's used proactively as well as reactively. So proactively, if there's a suspicious vehicle that comes into an area, you can do something. Reactively, if there was an incident that can take place, you can follow that vehicle where it went and where it came from. But of course, when it comes to interaction between people, where you've got actual sound and actual video footage that is done in a manner and fashion with software that's admissible in court, it's an entire change in dynamic. We always hear that there's a counter charge against a police officer because he used excessive force. The police officer said, no, I used the necessary force. It will go a long way in helping us in respect of holding people to account and also saving the fiscus a fortune. We're talking about billions of rands that have been paid out in claims against the police for so-called malicious prosecution, etc. So there's only wins and positives that can come out of the use of body cams.
The cynic in me, Chad, is worried that knowing how things work in this country, some police officers, let me put it that way, will just simply switch off these cameras and just, do police work with them being left off, such that you'll ask, where's the record? And there'll be no record. Should it be made difficult for police officers to switch them off, or consequences if they do?
Of course, they have to be tamper-proof, and they have to be monitored, that if they are switched off or if they are not in use, some or other signal gets sent through to a centralized control center. It's vitally important that we understand that those cameras are there for the protection of the public as well as the protection of the police officer. I'm not sure if you know of this, but in the last couple of weeks, there was an issue in one of the custodial centers in the United States of America where a person was allegedly beaten to death. This week, the correctional officers were held to account and had been charged for murder because their body cams, which couldn't be tampered with, showed that they beat this person mercilessly. Now, you're asking about repercussions for our police officers. It was reported in our media yesterday that 2 police officers have been dismissed. The one was an investigating officer who said he couldn't find a suspect and he wrote his docket dead without actually looking for the suspect. And the other was his actual commanding officer for signing off on that. So we're seeing consequences and accountability. So there has to be a standing order that if you switch those cameras off or you tamper with those cameras, you are faced with disciplinary processes.
Lastly, Chad, should we be concerned about the logistics of it all? You're talking body cams. I imagine that being devices, they will need to be charged at some point. There's issues of storage of that information, space, and the costs, and perhaps a whole operation may need to be started up to deal with this aspect of policing.
It's going to be costly. We're going to see how this pilot project works. We're very confident that the police minister is doing the right thing by rolling out this project. But of course, like you said, the infrastructure has to be able to support the rollout of these cameras. 2/3 of all American police officers are already equipped with these type of tamper-proof video surveillance. It's something that we need in South Africa, and it's something that we have to make work.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time. That's Chad Thomas there, who is from IRS Forensic Investigations. So there you have it. The initially limited rollout, we are told, will be about 100 cameras. So the SAPS, just for perspective, has over 150,000 members. In fact, by some numbers, 179,000 police officers. So it really is a modest start. 100 from the 1st of April. But the idea is that over the course of 5 years, it will continue to be rolled out. And I suppose the system will be improved as and when it's rolled out over the coming years. What do you think of it all? I see all of your WhatsApp voice notes. I'll take them a bit later on. For now, let me check in with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the failure by Finance Minister Inoko Dongwana to table the budget should not be interpreted as a crisis. The president says even mature democracies around the world where there are coalition governments, the budget is a contested terrain. The South African Law Reform Commission is calling on the public to comment on non-trial resolutions for corruption cases, and the Free State Premier McQueen Letsoha Mataye will deliver her second State of the Province address in Bloemfontein today. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Mopari Highway crash at Block XX finally out of the way. It's taken a while this morning, but the crash scene is gone, and the big traffic backlogs that we had earlier into that scene a thing of the past as well. There's just been a crash on the M1 South at Olifantsfontein. The right emergency lane is closed. Vehicles up against the barriers there. That'll slow things down a bit. And the Mike 1 from Buccleuch down towards Marlborough Drive, still looking fairly heavy. Durban, 2 breakdowns to worry about, both on the N2 South. One before you get to the Komashu Highway, so Q from Gateway, and another one which is just being cleared as I read this from Spaghetti Junction, so delays coming into that from Umgena Road. Hopefully that'll clear away pretty quickly. Cape Town, the N1 into town, slow today from about Century City, Canal Walk area, so definitely easier on a Friday, but it's busy all the way to the elevated freeway. And the standout is really the M5. It's really heavy this morning from Kenilworth up to Coburg Interchange, and if you're trying to get out of Maitland, that Coburg Road that takes you up into the Coburg Interchange, that's all quite heavily backed as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you once again. So the Proteas are kicking off their Champions Trophy campaign against Afghanistan. Didn't we lose to Afghanistan just recently?
Yes.
Hopefully we're not still traumatized, yeah?
Yeah, and your recent is actually quite recent. It was last Wednesday. So I know we are, oh my word, I don't know what to say about this, but let's be positive, Thulas. We're ready to battle. Bavuma says it's time to deliver at the ICC Champions Trophy. We kick off the action today in Karachi, Pakistan. The Proteas will be looking to start strong, and Temba Bavuma says he knows what to expect from the pitch, or maybe not.
Wicket, I haven't had a look at the wicket, but from what I hear from the coach, it looks a fresh wicket, not as dry as the other wickets that we've seen. So maybe a little bit more assistance from the seam bowlers, but I think Karachi is generally a good wicket for the batters.
And the first ball being bowled today at 11 a.m. Meanwhile, the Afghanistan captain, Hashmatullah Shahidi, has rejected any sort of pressure for them to show out against the Proteas. The two sides will meet, and the skipper highlighting their familiarity with conditions in Pakistan.
First of all, I will tell you that it's not first time that we are playing in this Pakistan grounds. We have played here. We played Asia Cup also in Lahore last year. So we are totally ready, and we were working. We had a camp in Dubai. We prepared ourselves there.
On to soccer now. Stellenbosch, they've been drawn against Zamalek in the quarterfinals of the African Confederation Cup. Stellenbosch have reached the last 8 in their maiden appearance in the competition, finishing as runners-up to Renaissance Berkane of Morocco in Group B. They will host the first leg of the quarterfinal tie on the 3rd of April, with the return match away in Cairo 1 week later. Rugby, the Blitzboks have arrived in Vancouver, and that's ahead of the HSBC Sevens tournament, with coach Philip Snyman confident about their preparations. The squad faces a tough start, and that's opening against New Zealand tonight before clashing with Ireland and Australia. Snyman says the team have done their homework but now need to execute their game plan on the field.
We have the players. Obviously, we made 1 or 2 changes, tactical changes, and one due to injury. But I think for us, the first focus will be New Zealand, a very tough pool. And that first game against New Zealand will be crucial to lay a solid foundation and to build on that. And I think if we can man up against New Zealand and take them on physically in the first couple of minutes and get ball position and starve them from ball, our playmakers will do the job when it comes to finish the game.
And that match kicks off at 10 p.m. tonight. Tennis action. The world number 2 Iga Swiatek lost to a player younger than 18 for the first time on tour. She was stunned by Mira Andreeva in the Dubai Championships, 6-3, 6-3. Andreeva became the youngest semi-finalist at 17 years old in Dubai's 24-year history. Felix Auger-Aliassime advanced to the semi-finals of the Qatar Open when Daniel Medvedev retired from their quarterfinal clash with an illness. Auger-Aliassime had polished off the first set 6-3 when Medvedev decided he couldn't continue. Andrei Rublev converted his 8th match point against the second seed Alex de Minaur, sealing a semi-final spot in Qatar 6-1, 3-6, 7-6. And Carlos Alcaraz crashing out as well in the Qatar Open quarterfinals, losing to the Czech Yuri Lehechka 6-3. 3664. And finally, golf. Tiger Woods has joined PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan and the player director Adam Scott in the second White House meeting with President Donald Trump, another sign of the sport rapidly moving towards ending the division brought on by the Saudi-funded Live Golf. Yasir Al-Rumayyan, that's the governor of the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia and the financial muscle behind the rival league, was also part of the meeting. All these and more stories come to you around 12:30 with John Hedeka for SAFM Sport. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Hey Dowling, good morning to you once again. I see that gold is on your mind this morning, so let's talk about gold hitting record highs. You're saying it's nearing 3,000 Rand.
That's right, Tula. So that record high really being fueled rather by fears of a global trade war sparked by the U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threats. Yesterday, spot gold hit an all-time high of $2,954,000. This marks the 10th record high for gold this year. So in under 2 months, the yellow metal has outperformed expectations, and that'll surely start filtering through to some of our gold counters on the JSE. Now, the surge in gold prices is largely driven by safe haven demand as investors seek to hedge against potential economic uncertainty. Peter Grant, Vice President and Senior Metals Strategist at Zayna Metals, said ongoing trade tensions continue to stoke inflation and growth concerns, and therefore safe haven interest in gold is up. Trump's tariff threats have been a major contributor to those tensions, with his latest plans to impose tariffs on lumber, cars, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals, also just boosting the safe haven demand. Now, central banks continue to be big buyers of gold, using it as a hedge. This move provides underlying support for the precious metal. Additionally, ETF flows have seen 3 straight days of inflows into the gold market, further fueling the price surge.
So speaking of gold, we've been receiving some news out of Gold Fields, and they've been reporting on their second half performance, and that high gold price is a factor therein.
It really was a tale of two halves for Gold Fields. Tulas, the miner says a strong operational performance in the second half of its financial year and higher gold prices gave it a boost. Now, during the annual period, the normalized profit increased by 36%, and that improved performance was driven by a 25% higher gold price during the period, which offset a 10% decline in gold sales. Now, Goldfields CEO Mike Fraser attributed the strong results to a significant improvement in safety, operational and financial performance in the second half of the year. The company's assets that were impacted by weather-related or operational challenges in the first half recovered in the second half, contributing to the results. And this allowed the miner to declare a record dividend, dishing out a final dividend of 7 Rand per share, taking the total dividend to 10 Rand per share, which is up 10% on an annual basis. While that made shareholders smile, some were concerned about the miner's capital expenditure, as the company said it would spend heavily on improving operations and investments. Now, capex for the year is pegged between $1.49 to $1.55 billion.
Lastly, Dowling, what kind of Friday are we in for in the markets today?
So local markets are in for a mixed start, but that higher gold price will likely boost the Resources 10 complex. In terms of company news, Sibanye Stillwater out with numbers today, so traders will be digesting that. Now, these numbers could be the last ones under the leadership of outgoing CEO Neil Froneman, so a big one to watch today. On the currency front, the local unit benefiting from a soft dollar, trading at 18.34 to the greenback this hour. Meanwhile, U.S. futures in the red as trade jitters continue to spook investors. And then over in Asia, stocks on track to end the week mostly in the green as that tech rally continues to boost all indexes.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauling Lechela. She's kept you updated on the economy, business and the markets over the last 3 hours here on The Morning Brief.
Okay, Lehasa, we are recording 3, 2, 1, go.
A cold case is opened 39 years later after the body of a young man is discovered in a derelict building. There are 4 suspects. Suspect 1, a clergyman. Suspect 2, an eminent entrepreneur.
I really, those people are always shady.
Suspect 3, a community worker.
Hey, what are you saying?
And suspect 4, a wheelchair-bound husband caring for his wife.
Hey, and the fella you can't.
Each has a secret to hide. As their lies unravel, the people that they love the most begin to wonder what else they might be capable of. Nothing in this case is black and white. Can you ever really know the people closest to you? What secrets have they buried? Tune into Unforgotten Season 1, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Starts 24 February only on S3. Tabo, don't tell me that the script freaked you out. Where are you?
All right, let's talk TV licenses. Did you know that paying your TV license isn't just about legalities? It helps fund local productions and creates jobs in the entertainment industry. That means more epic dramas, exciting sports, and news that keep us informed. So, when was the last time you checked yours? Visit tvlic.co.za and make sure you are up to date. After all, it is your screen, your story. Hashtag your screen, your story.
These are the weekend shows on SAFM. Music of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. The Jet Set Breakfast with Michelle Constant. Seasons with Khomotso KG Mweketsi. The Soundtrack of Your Life with Ernest Pillay. Weekend Soundowner Classics with Kutlwano Masote. Spotlight with Zai Khan. The Weekend with John Gerika. Rhythm of Africa with Shayla Ndikumana. This is SAFM, the morning brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
17 minutes to 9. Illegal mining has been in the news recently after months of a standoff between police and illegal miners in Stilfontein in the northwest in recent months. There has been a call from some quarters for focus on skills development in order to revitalize the sector and to counter illegal mining. For more on the importance of training and skills development in the sector, I'm joined now by Dr. Thabo Mashungwane, who is the CEO of the National Mining SETA. Good morning to you and thank you for your time. So in a context where year in, year out at the mining industry, the question is always posed, is mining a sunset or a sunrise industry? Can we still mine, excuse the pun, mine more economic and job opportunities out of our mining sector? In that context, why is training related to skills in mining an important issue to consider?
Good morning and good morning to your listeners. Mining remains very important as one of the pillars for growing our economy in our country. And in that regard, it is important that we prepare the workforce, whether the current workforce in the mining space or the new entrants into that space, in order for us to continuously grow this economic sector. I mean, you're asking a question whether it's a sunrise or sunset. For me, it still remains a sunrise on the basis that once you infuse technological advancement in terms of method of mining as well as preparing the workforce to deal with these technological advancements of automation and so forth, you will then still get a lot of minerals out of the ground, from the ground. So this is why I'm saying it is important. There is a challenge that some of part of our mining is dying. Gold, you will have to dig much deeper for you to come out with gold. but there are other critical minerals in South Africa that will still benefit us as a country. So training is very important.
Would the focus on skills and training related to mining assist with some of the challenges we are dealing with, such as illegal mining and unregulated activity in the mining space?
Yes, training remains a central element in any sector, because once people are capacitated and well trained, you then, of course, say they will be more aware of the occupational and health safety elements of their workspace. But that will not be the end in itself, because you still need to regulate. And now regulation of the space then remains the prerogative of the relevant department. In this instance, it will be Department of Minerals, Petroleum Resources. So you then have to regulate, but our role is to say, once it's regulated, how best can we keep people to work in a safe environment, safe conditions, and to actually get the benefit out of what they are doing. So for me, training and capacity building is quite key.
So tell me a bit about the work then in that space of training of the MQA. How do organizations like the MQA help to deal with this issue and also questions of whether or not there's a skills deficit in mining and the role that organizations like MQA can play in plugging that skills gap?
MQA, it's one of the 21 sitters in the country, and it is then seized with the responsibility of taking care of the skills needs in the mining sector. Like you have other sitters who have responsibility of taking care of the skills needs within their economic sectors. Therefore, as MQA, we then get, our resource funding comes through the levies paid by the employers, so as we are able to train the current workforce. How then we then begin to reskill and upskill them, either for them to become productive, also be safe in their working space, and also ensure that they also get job satisfaction, because they then have to progress in their own careers. So it's one thing for the current workforce, and this is where we're working closely with the trade unions and the employers. But secondly, we are now saying, how then do we make space for the new entrants, make them employable, so as they must then have access to this environment. In this particular instance, we're looking at the unemployed young people, we're looking at youth and women, we're looking at new entrants coming through universities at the high-end skills of engineers, as well as the TVETs, artisans, and the community education training, colleges, where we provide foundational skills. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Dr. Thabo Mashungwane, who is the CEO of the National Mining Sitter.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Update on the Midrand situation. A crash on the side of the highway southbound at Olifantsfontein, just holding traffic up a little bit as you arrive into that scene. It's generally a light volume day, so there's not much impact there. The R24 route coming in from the airport, the earlier crash at Galuli's approach on the N12 has been cleared. Durban N2 southbound, a breakdown in the roadworks between between Gateway and Komarshu, so the run into Durban from the Mhlanga side is slow, and there's another vehicle that's just broken down on the N2 south before Spaghetti Junction, so a bit of a slowdown once you get past the Umgena Road section. Cape Town's M5 is very heavy today. Big queues from sort of Klipfontein Road up to the Kuberg Interchange. That is just pushing a lot of traffic back into sort of Maitland, the Kuberg Road, Ford Trekker Road sort of confluence as you get out or through Maitland up towards that Kuberg Interchange. That's all pretty heavy. And we've had some very heavy traffic around the central Stellenbosch area this morning. A lot of it is eased, but the R44 North coming in from Somerset West and the R304, the run in from Kaya Mundi, both of those routes into central Stellenbosch stay busy. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
With Ford's Blue Sky offers, get a new Ranger XL from just $5,899 per month, including our optional service plan, only when financed through Ford Credit. 10% deposit, primeless 4.75%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers, where our Ford Family Guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. Ford Credit is a registered credit provider and an authorized financial services provider. T&Cs apply.
Ever since Uspilion won 5,000 rand, 5 tower on Wheel of Fortune, he only wears white push-in sandals. Star white, Baba. And he owns 10 identical pairs. Before he did not even know the Queen's language. Now, Kalabo, wow. Chance, let's watch Wheel of Fortune weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7:30 on S3 and see how one spin changed Spillion's life and how it can change ours as well in just one day.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
So a lot of your calls have to do with the issue of police officers wearing body cams. So let me just take one or two that have got to do with different topics. Let me start with Prophet OJ. Prophet OJ, you want to talk to me about this issue of the soldiers that remain in the DRC. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Thulasizwe. I'm saved by the blood of God, Jesus Christ. I've been wanting to send my comment on this issue for a long time, and then the call has not been going through. Look, Thulasizwe, I don't think the African leaders have the capacity to, give chance to negotiations more than trying to keep peace by ambush or by force. I think we tried many centuries to try and preserve peace and keep it with soldiers. I think it's time now to find another way. I think Africans have got the capacity and the power to negotiate deals that will bring about peace, not the peace that is brought by soldiers. We will always be falling into this trap of having our soldiers dying in classes like this. I don't think it's time now for Africa to continue with this classes. Right. I think politically we need strong leaders who can now sit around the table, negotiate settlement.
Different. All right.
Different.
Thank you for that. That's Prophet OJ. Let me move on to Tomane in Cape Town. Good morning to you, Tomane. You want to talk to me about body cameras and police officers?
Yes. Good morning. It's a brilliant idea to have body cams, but unfortunately in South Africa the corruption and maladministration is embedded in the system in a way that I don't see it being effective or achieving the intended goal, because imagine the police, they stop you with this body cam and then they want to do their own thing. They just switch it off. There are no consequences, There are big things where people are caught red-handed, but they are still in their jobs,
Yeah.
So imagine just switching a camera and you say, no, it's a technical glitch,
Yeah.
Even now, if I tell you, I met this other guy who was telling me about the licenses. Apparently these days, the learner's license, you go in, you fill it, complete it in a computer. But still, a person the person that is supposed to be invigilating is completing the test for the learner.
Yeah. No,
So I can tell you I don't know what we can do, but it's a good idea, but I don't think it will achieve. It's just another wasteful expenditure.
Yeah. Look, hopefully it will be the body cams will be tamper-proof with dire consequences, as I've been saying, for those who choose to switch them off. Lungelo in KwaZulu-Natal, you also want to weigh in on the same issue of body cams for our police officers.
Yeah, I think firstly, let's welcome the pilot project. Obviously, it's 100 per year, meaning that it's 500 police officers within 5 years out of a total of 146 commissioned officers on the ground doing the work. So it's nothing really significant. The question that I have is, what is it a strategic response to? Are there IPID cases of police abuse which require such footage? What is the legislative framework for admissibility, whether to courts or for disciplinary procedures, considering that not all officers would have it? So I think there would be major labor issues there. What of the IT infrastructure and service, considering the declining budgets? It's a good idea, if make no mistake about it, but The police also have the Safer City project, which is being piloted in eThekwini. That speaks to various camera utilizations, working with municipalities, businesses, as well as private cameras. So I think a focus on that would yield much better results than necessarily body cameras. But also, for me, where the police are concerned, there's one thing that I'm looking at. The strategic plan 2020 to 2025 has come to an end. Now, the Minister of Police has a conundrum before him. He has a national commissioner whose term of office will be coming to an end. Does he develop the strategic plan with that national commissioner and then appoint another one within the next 2 years who will be responsible for the implementation? Or does he ask the national commissioner to take early leave, get a national commissioner, and then develop that strategy with him, with the very same person who will be responsible for the implementation? I think those are the bigger issues than 5,000 cameras over a period of 5 years.
Lungelo, thank you so much for those insights. That's Lungelo in KwaZulu-Natal. I always enjoy his calls because, he seems to have a particular understanding, right? He's not disclosing where he gets it from, but you can tell that this is a person who follows the sector quite closely. Let me take one or two of your voice notes about the issue of body cams.
Morning, Thulas. Yeah, but these body cams on the police, they should do that to traffic cops as well, stopping them taking bribes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it needs to cut across all the various law enforcement agencies, no doubt about that.
Good morning, Thulasizwe and your team. This is Sakile Ntsugwini from Wamhlabialingan. Thulas, the body camera for the police officers is a good initiative as it will deter those corrupt police officers from engaging in corrupt activities. Thank you.
Yeah, so a great deal of support. That seems to be the theme. Let me take two more before I go back to the calls.
Hi, morning, Thulas. This being South Africa, it won't take long before the union start complaining about those body cams that they invade the privacy of the members, they invade the privacy of this and that, and there will be matches for those cameras to be done away with. So just watch the space. This is good old RSA. Thanks to us, Thabo Midrand.
Yeah, Thabo, thank you for that. Those are some of the issues that I think we must front load, right, and ensure that by the time we implement, we've dealt with and grappled with them to the full extent.
What a joke, absolute joke, to think that there's anything that can be done to kind of hinder the corrupt nature of each and every cop in this South Africa. The South African Police Service is a corrupt agency, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. We're just going to waste our taxpayers' money on those things. Yes. So let us speak in Bombay, currently in Krill, Bumalanga.
Zolecho speaks. No, I don't agree with you with the part about each and every cop. I've met so many good police officers, really, really good. And I'm not just saying that to be politically correct. I have met some really great police officers. I've been assisted recently by, one police station where they met my expectations and even went beyond. Yes, I agree with you. There are some cops who are just absolutely corrupt and don't belong in that service. Patrick in the Northern Cape, good morning to you. Short and sharp for me. What about Errol Musk?
Thank you. How are you?
Very well.
Very well. I believe the interview that you've made with Elon Musk's father was very interesting, and you asked very uncomfortable questions, and that is what we want as the listeners, to have those uncomfortable questions to any person who came to the radio. So it was very interesting. There was a caller from RBS who said you must apologize. There's no need for you to apologize. We want such information. We want such questions that makes such people uncomfortable. So we want that. So I just wanted to say you make my week, and we'll keep it up.
I appreciate
very happy
that.
about
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you very much.
Patrick, thank you. What a way to end it off. That's Patrick there in the Northern Cape. Thank you for those words. That's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. Thank you for listening and thank you for your engagement. The Talking Point with Kethi Motlatlana is up next here on SAFM after the news. Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS CAR to 43187 now.
In our top stories, President Ramaphosa speaks on budget delay and public input wanted on how justice system can be transformed. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa says the failure by Finance Minister Inogo Dongwana to table the budget should not be interpreted as a crisis. The president says even mature democracies around the world, where there are coalition governments, the budget is a contested terrain. Addressing the media on the margins of the G20 Foreign Affairs Ministers meeting in Johannesburg, Ramaphosa said the government of national unity will find one another over the budget.
What happened, it will pass. It happened and it will come to pass. We now need to buckle down and say, how do we then deal with the challenges that the country faces? I know there's a temptation for people to be heated up, be hot under the collar and focus on the issue of, and said there was no leadership, there was no consultation. Yes, it happened. Just given us a lot of lessons, but we must move on.
The South African Law Reform Commission is calling on the public to comment on non-trial resolutions for corruption cases. The Commission says non-trial resolutions should be used for individuals or companies accused of corruption where they admit responsibility without a finding of guilt. This forms part of its discussion papers on the amendments needed in the Criminal Procedure Act. Anti-corruption lawyer Colette Ashton says the accused should still not go unpunished.
The South African Law Reform Commission is considering that in exchange for finding of not guilt but responsibility, the implicated company or individual would have to pay substantial penalties and show genuine cooperation in handing over information to law enforcement that can be used in the investigation of high-level individuals, information that law enforcement agencies could never get without cooperation from the inside.
The Free State Premier Mokwin Letsoha Mataye will deliver her second State of the